at mas mapabilis ang mga gawain, nahahanapan ng mga masasamang loob ng paraan para gamitin sa masama. Kamakailan ko lang nabalitaan, halimbawa, na pati ang disappearing message function sa mga chat ginagamit na para magpalitan ng mga nude pics. Disappearing para may teaser, tapos kung magbabayad, makukuha mo na ang file. Friends, we are currently in the process of fine-tuning both the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Bill and the Online Sexual Abuse and Exploitation of Children Bill. The discussions on these bills are making substantial progress, and I'm hoping to be able to sponsor them in plenary before Congress adjourns. The TWG process is underway, and this is the process to really look into the more legal and technical aspects of the measures, including the question on whether or not we will report out two separate bills or one consolidated measure. But in crafting these bills and their technical features, it's important not to lose sight of the big picture. Bakit natin ito ginagawa? Para kanino natin ito ginagawa? I'd like us to really get a sense of the problem and hear from those who have experienced it themselves. Paano ba talaga ito nangyayari? What are the different ways that online sexual abuse and exploitation of children happens? How do the offender and the victim survivor or the one who experiences it make initial contact? What are the roles of the family and the community? What strategies and methods do the perpetrators employ para hindi sila mahuli? What are the difficulties in prosecution? How can we help our law enforcement to go after these offenders? How can we protect those who suffer this experience in the immediate, medium, and long term? And perhaps also important for purposes of legislation, what are the gaps in our laws that require changes in legislation? Ito po mga kaibigan ang mga gabay na tanong natin sa hearing ngayong umaga. I am aware that Senator Kiko would also like to make an opening statement, and I will ask him to do that as soon as he joins us. So, Comsec, paki-introduce na muna yung ating mga resource persons.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. The committee would like to acknowledge the presence of the following resource person. We have from the Department of Justice, we have State Counsel Mary Grace Quintana, State Counsel Carla Nitura Kalugay. Also from the Department of Justice, we have Attorney Angerine Medina. From the Anti-Human Trafficking Division of the NBI, we have Attorney Janet M. Francisco. From the Philippine Commission on Women, we have Armando Orsilia, Miss Clehencia San Juan, Miss Christine Ann Lee. From the Commission, from the National Privacy Commission, we have Attorney Erlane Lumano. From the Department of Social Welfare and Development, we have Miss Maricel Deloria, Miss Carol Nuida, and Miss Gabriela Fernandez. From the Department of Tourism, we have Director Rowena Lou Montesilio. We have Miss Ruth Elikian and Attorney Jerry Lee Grantosa. From the Department of Education, we have Attorney Hill Anthony Aquino. From the Centers for Gender Equality and Women's Human Rights, we have Mr. Aaron Kayabyab. From the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women Asia Pacific, we have Ms. Jean Enriquez. From the Philippine Legislative Committee on Population and Development Foundation, Inc. and Child Rights Network, we have Attorney Samantha Santos and Ms. Claire Lyson. From the Philippine Legislative Committee on Population and Development Foundation, we have Ms. Denise Valdez. From Plan International Philippines, we have Ms. Shigemi Muramatsu, Ms. Jeremy Kringkuting. From the Women's Legal and Human Rights Bureau, we have Miss Jeline Paclaren, together with Ms. Liz Collin. From the Foundation for Media Alternative, we have Ms. Janina Sarmiento. From the Democratic Socialist Women of the Philippines, we have Ms. Elizabeth Angshoko. From Facebook, we have Mr. Christopher Kusupili, together with Claire Amador, Amber Hoax, Rob R. Abrams, and Malina Ilond. From the Paymaya, we have Attorney Basilio Bizaya Jr. And from GCAS, we have Attorney Maria Seferina Sinson. From Globe, we have Attorney Ariel Tubayan. From PLDT, we have Attorney Eileen Reo. From the Coalition of Concerned Families of the Philippines, we have Miss Maria Edith Decibel. From the Citizens Action Against Crime, we have Miss Teresita Angsi. From the UN Women Philippines, we have Miss Cherise Jordan. From UNICEF Philippines, we have Attorney Marie Michelle Munoz Quezon. From Stairway Foundation Inc., we have Mr. Israel Deloy. From Google, we have Attorney Ives Gonzalez. From together with Mr. Daniel Fiel. From DOJ, we have ASEC Nicolas Felix T. and Prosecutor Yvette T. Coronel. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Comsec. And on behalf of the committee, I'd also like to congratulate the head of NBI Trafficking, Anti-Trafficking Unit, Attorney Janet Francisco, for your citation, ma'am, from the Australian Federal Police for catching the world's worst pedophile. Mabuhay po kayo, ma'am, and you really bring something important to our commemoration of International Women's Month this year. Mabuhay po. Senator Amy, would you like to make an opening statement before we begin with our resource persons?
Oh, I would just like to lend full support to all the resolutions and bills filed in this effort. And it's most important that this being Women's Month, we finally give credence and voice to all the children, women, and beleaguered families in the effort to finally end the title of the Philippines as the child pornography hotspot of the world. This is a disgraceful and unacceptable title that we have earned. So we must put an end to it with the help of our ISPs, with our regulatories, and all the concerned communities. Thank you very much to our chairwoman who has taken up the cudgels for all of us.
Thanks so much also, Sen Aimee, and for being one of the authors, actually, of the bills we are considering in these hearings and for faithfully participating in these hearings. Salamat po. So now, mga kasama, pakinggan po natin, unang-una sa lahat, no, yung salaysay ng ating mga arguably pinaka-importanteng resource persons in these hearings. Nagpaalam po sila at pumayag ang ating komite na sila'y manatiling anonymous at hindi sila magbubukas ng kanilang camera. Okay, magsisimula tayo kay Ana, pagkatapos susunod si Ria, at pagkatapos naman si Kevin. At bago po sila magsalita, gusto kong i-assure kayo, no, Ana, Ria, at Kev, na tinitignan ng komite yung inyong best interest. So kung alin man sa mga tanong, di kayo komportable, please feel free, don't hesitate to tell us. So gusto lang i-enable ng komite na masabi ninyo, maikwento ninyo yung inyong kwento sa lahat naming mga advocates na nandito. So, Ms. Ana, could we hear from you first, please?
Magandang umaga po.
Sige, Ana, tuloy lang.
So, narito po ako para i-present po sa lahat ang po si Ana, kasalukuyang 12 taong gulang at mula sa Eastern Visayas. Ako po ay isang survivor ng sexual abuse and exploitation. At isang sa Pilipinas ang sumunod. So, ang umaga noong February 2018, ako po ay na-rescue ng mga alagad ng batas kasama ang NBI, social workers at iba pang bahagi ng NGOs. Bago po ang kaganapang ito, nagpabago ng di magandang takbo ng aking buhay. Ako at ang aking pamilya ay may pinagdaraan ng pagsubok. Taong 2015, pagkatapos ko ng high school, kami ay nagkaroon ng alitan ng aking ama tungkol sa aking desisyong hindi magpatuloy sa pagkokolehiyo. Nagalit siya sa akin, ako na lang daw ang magiging kinabukasan ko kung hindi ako mag-aaral. Sabi ng ama ko, edukasyon lang daw kasi may pili nilang kayamanan sa amin. Ngunit bilang isang kabataan, hindi ako nakinig sa payo nila. Umalis ako ng bahay at sumama sa mga kaibigan ko. Kung anong trabaho ang pinasukan namin, pero isa wala akong natanggapin. So, ang ginawa ko, bumukot, pinagtawag sa Pilipinas. Nag-aral ulit ako sa high school. Tapos, hindi niya ako pinansin. So, siguro, nagalit na sobra yung papa ko. Pinadala ako ni papa sa lolo ko doon sa Manila. Nagatrabaho ako doon sa may SM, pero hindi ko rin yun natapos kasi nga nagkaroon na naman ako ng barkada doon. Umuwi ako ng madaling araw na, minsan umaga na. So, siguro sa galit ng aking lolo, napalo ako at pinasakay ako ng bus pauwi ng Visayas. Yun, umiyak na lang ako, niyakap po si papa pagkarating ko ng bahay. Pero di man lang po siya umimik. Opo. So, kaya tinawagan ko ang isa kong kaibigan. Nagtanong ako sa kanya kung pwede ba ako pumasok.
Ana, medyo choppy yung audio mo ha. Pakiayos lang. Pero ituloy mo please yung pagkwento mo. Hinuhuli namin yung kwento mo. Naririnig namin ikaw pero minsan choppy. Pero sige lang, ituloy mo muna yung kwento mo.
Sige po. So doon, tinuruan niya ako ng trabaho niya, yung humarap sa kamera, maghubad at makipag-usap sa mga foreigner kapalit ang pera. Sa loob ng 5 buwan, ito ang pinagawa sa amin. Sa ngalan ng pagkita ng pera, and I'm not proud of it. So, nang ako ay
Paano ka nga
ma-rescue
unang
isang
kinontak,
umaga,
Ana? Paano ka unang kinontak para
sa
gawin itong trabaho? Messenger, Facebook Messenger.
po.
Okay.
Opo, magkaibigan naman po ng high school.
Okay. So mamaya itatanong din namin iyan sa Facebook kasi nandito sila no at kanila yung Messenger. Sige Ana, ituloy mo yung kwento mo.
Opo. So, nang ako ay ma-rescue isang umaga noong February 2008, tulungan kami makabangon muli. Nigyan kami chance na potential namin. So, malaki po ang pasalamat ko sa lahat ng taong so, thankful to God. I'm very happy for ngayon, 3 taon ang makalipat ang pulong umagang yun. At ang mga kagana ng gobyerno is nakakasama NGO na patuloy na tumutulong at nakikipaglaban. Sa mga kapwa ko po survivors, nandito po ako pang ipahayag ang isang kwento at panawagan ng isang kabataang babae. Sa pamahalaan, sana po ay may pagtibayin at ayusin ang ating mga aksyon, lalo na sa mga kanayunan. Gamitin po natin ang kapangyarihan upang may patupad ang batas at mabigyang hustisya ang mga nabiktima ng illegal na gawain na ito. Our goal is to shut down OSAEC and end human trafficking. Sana may patupad ito sa kada barangay nang sa gayon ay magkaroon ng awareness at karagdagang kaalaman ukol dito. May mga lugar pa po na wala pang kaalam-alam tungkol sa OSAEC. Tulad sa aming lungsod, marami pa po mga kabataan ang nangailangan ng at makaalam na krimen ang gawain ito. So, tulungan po natin silang makaiwas. Turuan natin silang mag-report sa mga otoridad. Bumuo tayo ng mga kabataang advocates. Tulad ko na siyang tutulong upang mapalawak ang kaalaman tungkol sa issue ng OSAEC. Sa mga kumpanya naman po, sana maging bahagi rin po tayo tungkol sa kaligtasan ng mga kabataan ngayon. Naway maging bukas ang inyong mga mata sa mga illegal na gawain online na siyang umaabuso sa aming pagkabata. Kung may maroon mang hindi kaya-aya sa online, umaksyon po agad tayo. Kung kinakailangan iba ng account, gawin na. Lalo't sa panahon ngayon, maraming mga kabataan ang naabuso. Dahil sa hindi tamang paggamit ng internet o teknolohiya, tulungan po natin sila. Sa aking mga kapwa kabataan naman po, victim survivor at naging advocates, sana may gawin din po tayo sa ating mga kanya-kanyang lugar sa pamamagitan ng pagkakondak ng pagbibigay kaalaman. Ipalaganap po natin ang nakalagay sa batas at ituro din natin kung paano sila mag-report sa mga otoridad kung nasa sitwasyon na sila. Turuan din natin ang iba pang mga kabataan na magkaroon ng karagdagang kaalaman tungkol sa OSAEC at human trafficking. Mahalagang lalo pa nilang maintindihan kung ano ito at kung ano ang pinagkaiba. Ano pinagkaiba nito. Mahalagang maging aware tayong lahat at malaman natin ang tamang paggamit ng social media. Lamang po. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat sa iyo, Ana. Naputo lang yung pandinig ko kanina sa Shopee, pero ang ano pala, yung kaibigan ang
Opo.
nag-contact sa Messenger, hindi po yan issue sa amin. Pero nung pinapachat ka sa mga foreigner at minsan ay wala pang kasuotan, anong website o anong platform yung pinagamit sa iyo para mag-chat sa kanila at paano din sila nagbabayad sa iyo noon?
Ano po yung website po kami na ginagamit nasa-show na po kami, yun po yung ginagamit namin na yung chatterbait.com. Minsan subscribe po.
Anong pangalan, Ana? Anong platform?
Chatterbait.com.
Chatterbait.com. Okay. Chatter o
Yes po. Tapos
shelter?
minsan po pag chatter, kumbaga
Chatter
chat,
talaga. Parang
Opo.
chatterbait.com. Bait pain. Okay. Minsan,
sa Skype.
or sa Skype. At paano
Opo.
naman sila nagbabayad noon sa iyo?
May tinatawag naman po sila na token. Yung kaibigan ko lang po kasi nakaalam nun.
So through yung kaibigan mo dati na nagbabayad sila.
Ng cash. Opo. Yes
Magkano
po.
yung ibinabayad nila noon sa iyo through yung kaibigan mo?
Nakadepende po ma'am sa sa oras ng aming trabaho, sa pagpa-private sa amin ng foreigner. Yun po.
Okay. Salamat, Ana. Sigurado yung mga colleagues ko ay may follow-up questions din sa iyo kahit mamaya sa hearing. Ngayon, bago natin ipagpatuloy kina Ria at Kev, gusto kong i-acknowledge yung presence din ni Sen Kiko dito sa ating pagdinig. At Sen Kiko, meron kang gustong ibigay na opening statement sa ating hearing. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize for being late. I came from another hearing on the Committee on Agriculture, where we are tackling the high prices of pork and other commodities. And thank you for this opportunity Magandang araw sa kanilang lahat. Our appreciation goes to the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations and Gender and the Committee on Science and Technology for putting on schedule this public hearing. With social media sites such as Facebook, Twitter, functioning like an open freeway of information and communication, danger lurks by the second that our vulnerable children could become victims or have become victims of exploitation and abuse on these platforms. Nakakalungkot at nakakagalit isipin ang katotohanan na base sa mga datos nagagamit ang ilang social media sites gaya ng Facebook, Twitter, sa bentahan ng mga larawan at video ng mga bata. Para ka lang daw nag-online shopping. Maraming pagpipili ang litrato o video ng mga bata. Parang add to cart lang ang gagawin sa matitipuhang mga bata. While data could indicate that the number of pieces of the exploitative content does not equal the number of victims, as the same content potentially slightly altered could be shared repeatedly, one victim of this horrible crime is one too many. According to global enforcement data, the Philippines has become one of the largest known sources of online sexual abuse and exploitation cases. According to a report released in May of 2020 by the Washington-based International Justice Mission, in partnership with the U.S. Department of State and the Philippine Interagency Council Against Trafficking, there was a consistent sharp rise in number of IP addresses used in child sexual exploitation from 23,000 in 2014 to 81,000 in 2017. The report also confirmed UNICEF's findings that online sexual exploitation of children was usually a family-based crime, where the abuse was usually perpetrated by biological parents or other relatives of the victim. Recently, the NBI revealed that the proliferation of commercial adoption in the country has also expanded online. Since last month, the NBI was reported to be working with the DSWD to track down the persons and groups behind 48 Facebook accounts that claim to facilitate online illegal adoption. In 2019, NBI's International Operation Division has intercepted a group of child trafficking who were trying to sell an infant in a department store. Two of the perpetrators were the parents of the child, while the others were brokers who set up a social media account to look for buyers and negotiate prices. While we have a number of laws and statutes, the continued proliferation of online exploitation and abuse of our children in social media prompts us to take a look at these laws to see if there are gaps that can be filled in their implementation and to make these laws tougher and more responsive to the needs of the times. As we take a close look at the efforts of our law enforcers, we would also like to find out actions taken by social media platforms, proactive rather than reactive actions in curbing, if not eradicating, the rampant criminality on their portals. Unless social media giants like Facebook, Twitter, Google act aggressively to permanently address the criminal acts being committed using their platforms online, then pretty much these sites are party to the crime. Using these social media platforms to abuse and harm our children is simply abhorrent and unacceptable. And we have prepared a number of questions to our resource persons, which we will raise later when our turn comes. Thank you, Madam Chairperson, and magandang araw sa kanilang lahat.
Thank you, Senator. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of DOJ USEC M. Aglipal Villar. Salamat, USEC, for joining us and leading the DOJ contingent in this continuing hearing. A correction also from USEC M. A correction also from the CHR's resource person, Aaron Kayabyab. He is from the CHR Policy Advisory Office. So thank you. Bago po tayo magpatuloy sa mga kwento ni Ria at Kev, Ana, matanong lang kita ulit, saang bansa kadalasan galing yung mga abusers mo noon?
Ma'am, good morning po.
Yes, Ana.
Kadalasan po sa sa UK, mga taga US po.
Okay, so yung dalawang western countries na iyon, no, US
Opo.
at saka UK. Ilan
Opo,
kayo
kadalasan
na
taga UK.
Opo. Ilan kayo na nagtatrabaho ng ganyan noon, na ni-recruit ng friend mo, ng kaibigan mo?
Nung nandoon ako, 2 po kami. Kasama po yung kapatid ng kaibigan ko. Tapos ako po.
Okay. So, kapatid nung kaibigan mo, tapos ikaw
Opo.
na kaibigan niya. Tapos kanina kasi sabi mo sa amin, yung bayad na ibinibigay sa iyo ay depende sa oras na tinatrabaho mo or kung private ito. So, halimbawa, kung 1 oras ka nagtatrabaho noon, magkano ang bayad sa iyo? Ano yun, Ana?
Yung isang trabaho.
Sorry, medyo choppy, hindi ko marinig. Ilang taon ka na ba ngayon? At saka ilang taon yung isa pang kasama mo noon, yung kapatid nung kaibigan mo?
Ako po ngayon, 22. Tapos
Nung
yung kasama
panahong
ko po
iyon?
ngayon, yung panahon yun, 17 po ako. Nung una ko pong trabaho dun sa kanya.
At yung kasama mo noon na kapatid nung kaibigan mo, ilang taon lang siya noon?
Pagkaalam ko po, 7 years old po siya. Kasi nandun na
7?
siya sa atin niya. Opo. Nandun na siya sa atin niya eh. Kasi yung atin niya nagpapaaral sa kapatid niya.
So ikaw, menor de edad pa noon, tapos yung
Opo.
kapatid nung kaibigan mo ay bata pa talaga.
Opo. Kaya kailangan mag-show sa Skype kasi hindi pwede mag-show ng bata sa Chatterbait. Yung ginagawa sa Skype po mag-show. Kasi posible pong iban yung Chatterbait account ng kaibigan ko kung mag-show doon ng bata.
Okay. So sa Skype pa talaga ipinakita yung batang kasama mo dahil doon hindi bawal magpakita ng bata.
Opo.
Tapos Ana, pwede mong sagutin ito or kung hindi ka komportable, kung okay sa iyo, pwede kong itanong sa kung may social worker kang kasama. May pagpipilit ba, may pagkulong ba na ginawa sa inyo noon para magtrabaho kayo ng ganoon?
Actually, ma'am, din naman po kami as in kinulong kasi baga Opo, ganun po yung nangyari kasi nga parang ang dami nang sinasabi sa akin ng kaibigan ko na maganda ang trabahong to, ganyan. So, ako parang parang nagustuhan ko na rin siya na dapat pala hindi. Kasi illegal na pala yung ginagawa namin noon. Kasi wala pa po akong alam dati.
Yes,
Just to
salamat
clarify.
Ana. Yes, Sen Kiko.
How old was she? Sabi natin, menor de edad. Anong
Yes,
edad?
17 daw Sen Kiko nung panahon iyon. At yung batang kasama niya 7 years old lamang. Opo.
Thank you.
Salamat Sen Kiko at salamat Ana. Kung pwede, wag ka munang aalis. Kung pwede, samahan mo kami sa hearing na ito dahil baka mamaya ay meron pang follow-up questions sa iyo or mga points na babanggitin ng ibang resource persons na gusto mo ring mag-comment. Okay? Pero salamat Ana.
Sige po.
Thank you.
Salamat po.
Salamat sa iyo. Sa puntong ito mga kasama, pakinggan naman natin ang kwento ni Ria. Miss Ria?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Ria. Please proceed kung pwede mong i-share sa amin ang story mo.
Thank you, Senator Risa. I'm a huge fan.
Salamat.
I'm Ria, age 26, and part of the core team of the Court Group Collective. We help victim survivors like myself access counseling and legal assistance through a safe space group chat. In 2011, my ex-boyfriend took photos of me without my consent when I was underage. He shared them with his friends, his brother, his brother's fraternity, his friends' fraternities. When I found out 2 years later, it was already too late. Those photos of me ended up so far-flung around the internet that nearly a decade later, men still tried to harass and blackmail me. It was all the same. Look at this picture. I have more. I will release them if you don't send me more. I will release them if you don't sex with me right now. That summer, I couldn't distract myself from my pain. I didn't want to hint that anything was wrong, but I was falling apart. I was stick thin, feeling helpless as I was unable to stop the spread of photos. I dreaded knowing that the upperclassmen in the university I was about to enter would have already seen my body without even meeting me. When I was a freshman, some fraternity members had the gall to ask me about the photos in front of other people. For years, I was harassed and threatened by multiple fake accounts. It was exhausting logging all of the threats. I was revisiting the trauma each time. There were moments I was convinced life was not worth living anymore, that this nightmare would last forever. What kept me going was knowing that none of this was my fault, and ending my life would mean letting these perverts win. Only months ago did my experiences lead me to join a team of students reaching out to people like me. We grew our support group completely online over the past 10 months. Lockdown had triggered a surge of online sexual harassment incidents, not just nationally but worldwide. What we need first and foremost is immediate takedowns of the sensitive media and banning of the accounts that harass us. There must be a faster, more accessible way to stop it before the spread is uncontrollable. Girls come to us almost daily, but many report not being taken seriously by the police unless there's a celebrity or male white foreigner involved. For some, the first result of their name on Google links to a porn site. We do our best to help, but we're lucky to even get an automated response from the sites. Finding a female technical expert is extremely difficult. Our options as a support group seemed limited to hoping more girls would commit to filing legal action, an exhausting ordeal in itself. Lawmakers and law enforcers need to understand these perpetrators better. By using fake accounts, hacking, and phishing, they show clear intent to harm, intimidate, and silence. What we currently have in the Philippines is so different from what other countries already have laws for. Swift online content takedowns, protocols on de-anonymizing perpetrators, and local sex offender registries. This bill, I think, would need to focus on two things: law enforcement and technology. The police and NBI are the first responders for victims of these cases. School administrations and HR departments too. If the people tasked with protecting us don't understand the urgency of our situation, if their first instinct is to conceal the fact that we're reporting or punish us for reporting in the first place, impunity will only grow. While the internet may seem like just the medium for committing these crimes exist on a global scale because of the internet. Certain social media platforms are the largest enablers of these child exploitation cases. Case after case brought to them, it seems what matters to tech companies like theirs is safeguarding the data rather than safeguarding basic human and civil rights. Our government has a duty to its citizens to assert their safety and basic human rights above the profit of big tech companies and online platforms. People call what happened to me revenge porn because my ex distributed my photos in retaliation after we broke up. But it isn't always about revenge. Non-consensual distribution of porn is about the disregard for consent and violation of sexual privacy. It's a power trip that takes away ownership of someone else's body. My story and the stories of the girls in our group show that these cases don't just die down. I hope that people's attention spans would turn elsewhere, but the anonymity of these perpetrators allowed them to commodify my body forever, granting access to virtually anyone. We can't call ourselves survivors in the sense that our incidents are behind us. Our harassment has no foreseeable end. Our harassment can make itself known at any given moment, destroying any attempts to forget and move on. So long as society turns a blind eye to what we go through, our harassment will never end. Non-action is an option I was entitled to and chose willingly in order to live my life. I chose to ignore the threats, to forgo filing cases against my perpetrators, knowing how long and how much it would take out of me. It's not the right choice for everyone, but I chose not to let myself be scraped and hollowed out, waiting in futility for the system to give me justice. But for those who choose to fight for themselves and access justice, they deserve so much better. We deserve better from the men in our lives, from the system, and from society. We deserve better. Thank you.
Yes, you deserve better, Ria. I'm so sorry for what you went through. And I wish we could all embrace you, mag-group hug sa iyo, mag-group hug kay Ana. I mean, you young women are the reason na nagko-commemorate tayo ng Women's Day and Women's Month every year. And thank you, Ria, for holding on to life. At salamat sa inyo ni Ana na nagsasalita kayo dito sa hearing na to para tulungan yung iba pang mga young women and iba pang mga young persons. Yeah, Ria, thank you. Thank you. In those photos that your ex-boyfriend circulated, how young were you then?
I was 16.
16. And how do those blackmailers contact you? Anong daanan nila? Anong platform nila to do that?
Back then, they would make fake accounts on Facebook. So, but lately they've moved to other platforms like Telegram.
So until now, Facebook and Telegram.
And a lot of other platforms.
Like which ones, Ria?
What other? Yeah.
Yes, and Kiko would also like to know which other
So-
platforms.
We've encountered girls affected by platforms like Hoop, a lot of local porn websites.
Mhm. What was the first one you mentioned? Ria? Who? WHO, was that?
WHOO. Sorry,
Oo.
HOOP. Hoop.
Hoop, Hoop. Okay.
And Twitter and Instagram as well.
Plus Twitter and Twitter and Instagram. Wow, they're all over the place. All right. Ria, I hope you'll stay with us for the rest of this hearing. Oh yes, please, Sen Kiko would like to also ask you questions. Sen Kiko.
Yes, on the aspect of immediate takedowns, Ria, did you yourself or anyone you may know, go through the process of reporting? What was the response, if any? How would you think? How would you rate, or how would you describe the response if, in fact, you or any others that you may know of tried to make these, to bring this to the attention of Facebook, Telegram, Twitter, Instagram?
When I first tried to look at my legal options, at the time, coordinating with Facebook for a takedown release through the DOJ would have taken 6 months. I'm not sure if it's any faster now. We have one girl in our group who had resolved her case around the same time when she was in high school, but we still found her name circulating in these malicious chat groups even after her case was supposed to be resolved. So we can't confidently say there's a surefire way of completely taking it down, because even my photos are still circulating.
On the point that you raised about coordinating with the NBI and the DOJ and Facebook, this is necessary. You have to have government in. You cannot go straight to Facebook and raise these issues without, of course, if you want to file a case, criminal case, etc. But if you just want immediate takedown, do you need to have government involved? What was your experience? Facebook would not recognize you or would not give you, unless there was, a complaint. Is that how it works, or how it worked?
With regard to law enforcement, our experiences with the police have been varied. For example, when I tried filing a complaint, it was literally just in the physical police blotter. Nothing came of it. When I called a year later, um, when many of us tried contacting Facebook for reporting on their own, we'd get an automated response or nothing would happen. So it really seemed as though if we wanted to have our data or whatever we investigated and found out have been validated to be used in court, for example, we would have to file the lawsuit first and then engage law enforcers to help us investigate. Otherwise, it seemed as though the validity of the data would be questioned if we didn't go that way. And even when we found a female technical expert, her capabilities were still limited as to what she could do on her own.
Yes, I raised this because you mentioned earlier, social media platforms are the largest enablers of online sexual abuse. And therefore, they have, they have the responsibility and the obligation to address this. Would you not say that? Even without government coming in, although of course government should have a strong position on this and in terms of law enforcement. But I'd like to think, like you said, these social media platforms are more concerned about safeguarding their data rather than safeguarding your rights.
Yes, that's really what I believe.
And I'd like to think if Facebook, for example, was serious about your welfare, your concern, that they should have, a process by which they can act swiftly. As you said earlier, immediate takedown is a must. Is that not right?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's been a while since we've needed it. These crimes have been happening ever since smartphones became common.
Yes, and your own experience was 10 years ago, and you said you are now involved with the advocacy of precisely others who have experienced it. Recently, have you seen a change in this attitude and the response of these social media platforms from the time that you experienced it yourself 10 years ago? I mean, it's been 10 years. I'd like to think that between then and now, they have taken more aggressive steps to address this.
In a way, yes. For example, Facebook, I think, has made their access to legal assistance more, has made it easier. But the thing is, these perpetrators just move platforms.
Yes, and therefore that makes it difficult for, unless they have the right digital technology application algorithm in place that would easily track them when they, or not easily, but would be able to track them should they open a new account.
Yes.
In other words, it's in the realm of the possible to do that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ria. And I share the concerns earlier raised by Senator Ontiveros. When I think of my own children, and something like this is completely and totally unacceptable. And we will do as best we can in this committee and in the Senate to address the injustice that you and many others have experienced online. Thank you for your inputs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sen Kiko. And thank you, Ria, for indicating two major fields that we should really follow up. I mean, by we, I mean the committee and as Sen Kiko said, the Senate, no? You pointed out law enforcement and tech. So we'll really be engaging now in this hearing and afterwards in terms of the recommended actions our law enforcement authorities and the different tech platforms. Yes, I see someone raising her hand. Yes, I'll be calling you next, Ms. Angeline. But first, friends, let's hear from Kevin. No, as one of our three, as I said earlier, arguably most important resource persons for this hearing. And then I'll come back to you, Ms. Angeline. Okay, Kev, pwede na ba naming marinig yung kwento mo?
Alright, hello. Okay naman yung audio, no? I'm not choppy or anything. Right?
No, we can hear you clearly, Kevin. Please proceed.
Okay, that's good. So I'm Kevin, age 23. I'm also part of the core group of our support group collective with Ria. I don't think I need to expound on what you've been doing with the support group. So I'm gonna go ahead and delve into what I would say birthed the support group. You know. Platforms mentioned earlier were Group Messenger, Telegram, Instagram, Facebook, and the likes. Right? So on these platforms, this was in early 2020, sometime March or April. Well, it's not my story to tell, but one of my associates or someone close to me was receiving an influx of friend requests and follows on so many social media platforms. Facebook, she would get 300 friend requests within 30-minute span of time. On Instagram, she had, I think at some point, 3,000 follow requests. That kind of harassment and stalking. So, of course, me as a concerned friend to this person, we delved into looking things up, right? So we dived into the rabbit hole, so to speak, and we found this elaborate network of revenge porn, right? Some of these group chats we've tried infiltrating on our own, tried to take them down. But as you know, dahil wala kaming legal help or technical expertise, there's nothing much we can do except report it to the platform. And in some platforms, just reporting it will take it down, but that doesn't mean it's gone. It just means it's gonna happen elsewhere. Correct? It is not gonna disappear. It's just gonna happen elsewhere. And while we monitor these chats, more and more victims in my personal circle of acquaintances and friends, I keep discovering these. We keep discovering these. It got to a point where there were so many of us in the support group that I personally have let go of monitoring because, of course, dahil nga lalaki ako, ayoko rin mag-invade ng privacy of our victims, survivors. Now, this is the beginning. What happened recently, late in 2020, by November, the support group was going well. We've been, doing things to help out our girls. My current girlfriend, malapit na kami mag 2 years. Someone hacked into her account, phishing. And you know how on Android phones or on iPhones, it automatically saves your photos, your videos into the cloud. Right? So her accounts were hijacked. Someone took charge of those files. They copied them. And not too long later, a week or two perhaps, maybe even 3, nagkaroon ng threat. Someone messaged her on Facebook. She told her, actually I can, she told her, this is more or less verbatim. She said, I'm going to cut everything short. Let's get this straight. I'm going to be honest, and I hijacked your accounts, and I took all of your videos and all of your pictures, and I'm going to post them on social media unless you reply to me. Continuing through this message, it says, don't get your boyfriend involved. It'll just get messy, etc., etc., etc. And so this threat happened in November. Okay, so for a little bit more context, sobrang daming, there are so many local porn sites that are exclusively hacked videos. All of them are hacked. All of them were taken from phishing sites. There's an entire website called PinayDB. This is a place where they upload photos and videos and tag the people in those videos, right?
What's the name again, Kev? Pinoy what?
I'll type it into the chat box. This one's called PinayDB.
Okay, thank you. And then please continue with your story.
Right. In this website, they upload photos, stolen videos, and they're tagged. The website itself says that you have to tag the full name of this person. Right? So this is an avenue for harassment to every one of the victims there. Moving forward, this was PinayDB. It's giving you this as an example, but the main focus of my discussion right now would be XBRI. I'll type in here also. That's XBRI and PinayFlix, right? Now, these two websites, like I said, are full of porn, and it's not even revenge porn. It's just they've been taken non-consensually from the parties involved. In this situation, me and my girlfriend, right? Okay, so these websites we monitor because some of the victims in the support group have been here. To my surprise, right? Well, my girlfriend has her own approach to dealing with the problem, right? Because we all deal with stress and trauma in a different way. And her way of doing it was to block this person who messaged her with the threat. She put everything on private. I, on the other hand, I took a different approach. So I've been monitoring these channels, monitoring these websites, and to my horror, not even too long ago, I think it was just a month ago, I found one of our videos on the website. Right. So, well, we had it taken down. These websites masquerade as if they're, international, as if it's professional, as if everything's consensual, because they have a quote unquote policy in effect that everything that there's nothing non-consensual, there is no bestiality, etc., etc. I guess that's the standard policy for porn sites, but they don't really follow it because obviously all of the contents of this website were taken non-consensually. Now, 2 weeks later, I find a video of ours on XBRI. It's a different video. It's another one of our videos. We tried to get this one taken down. It hasn't been taken down yet. And then, 2 more weeks, it's another video, a third video of a different, it's a different video. It's a different material. So, and so my girlfriend has been receiving so much harassment. I myself have been receiving harassment as well. She's been getting messages on Facebook, nice scandal. Some people take screenshots and send her these screenshots. It's for lack of a better word, it's sick. It's sick. They find joy in taking control and showing that you didn't consent to this, but I have it, right? And I'm receiving harassment too. But of course, we live in a patriarchal society, and it's so much worse for her. Right? It's gotten so bad. All the harassment has been so bad that when my girlfriend started work, say a week ago, I have been so worried that she would be receiving this kind of workplace harassment. Like I couldn't sleep. I would literally every night check these websites, check these group chats. Oh gosh. And this group chats, Facebook, Telegram, Hoop. Well, Facebook, we don't have any more monitored chats in Facebook. But Hoop and Telegram, I've been seeing our videos, different videos again from the ones I've posted in those websites. These group chats are free, and these are the ones that we have access to. But there are more group chats. They have what we call premium group chats. They pay to get in. And I have no doubt that on some premium group chat somewhere all of our files, all of our photos, all of our videos that were stored in the cloud automatically to our phones. They're available for consumption. They're commodified. They're making money of videos and materials that they took without consent from me or from a girlfriend. I'm not going to mention her name, of course, but we live in this fear since we do, I would say, work in an industry that is related to publicity. We have to advertise ourselves as people. This industry that is personality based, at any time we're afraid that we're going to be dropped from all of our roles, everything, because someone somewhere will sensationalize those videos. I honestly would count us lucky, because it's not even one of those things that went viral on Facebook. It hasn't gone viral, and that's lucky for us. But just imagine how much worse it is for the girls, for the other victims that have gone viral. It's so bad because some of these women, some of the victims we have had children already. It's 5 years behind them, 6 years behind them. Up until now, they can't go to work because they went to work, they tried to apply, and then even before they get the job offer, they get harassed already. These women range from children. I think the youngest in our group is 13 years old, to full-grown women of 30 or so who already have children. So you can see it doesn't matter what age. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's happening. You're never gonna outgrow it, no matter how long it takes, no matter how long, how much time has passed. It doesn't go away, and that's my fear for me and my girlfriend. For us, this is very, very fresh. It's been a month, but I've been working with these cases for more than a year now, and I felt the pain secondhand at first, and now this happens. It just builds my drive even more to find justice, because these chats is everything. We were able to identify some people somehow, but we don't have enough information to take it forward. Because when we did try to take it forward, to pursue legal action, to get the police involved or the NBI involved, it's victim blaming here. It's put in a blotter. 3 months later, nothing happens. You bring in a lawyer, you pay thousands and thousands of pesos, you drain all your resources, and still the NBI will not do anything about it. Nothing. A close friend of mine is a victim. We are so close that when I saw her added into the group chat of the victims, it took my breath away. This was early into the operation. I saw her, and I had no idea this was happening to her. The cross she had to carry every day. Because on so many websites and so many group chats, her materials are being spread, they're being sold everywhere. She gets harassed in school by classmates even. And it's a long battle. I know there has to be so much change that has to be put into place, systemic change, even law enforcement. We need to some training, some technological technical training for whoever is in charge, and then the infrastructure and everything deals with telecommunications, with internet providers and everything. But That's what me and Ria and the rest of our core group are fighting for. Every day, now me as a victim myself, I would lay down to sleep and end up sleeping at 5 a.m. because I scroll through all these, every platform that I know of, the chats, the websites, the Google Drives, the Mega Drives, and everything. And it's so fresh. Honestly, I can't put into words how it feels. Yeah, I may have missed a detail or two. I may have gone on for a bit too long, but I'm open to questions. If you'd like to any useful information that you can glean from what me or Ria knows, from everything. We're open to answer everything. We're open to cooperate with it because we've honestly, I personally have made it my life's mission to get these people behind bars. And thank you. Just to wrap it up. Thank you for listening to our stories.
Thank you very much, Kev, for sharing your story, you and your girlfriend's story. You know, despite the pain, we could all hear you trying to exhale the pain while you were telling us the story. And yes, I hope that you will continue to work with the committee as we also, in turn, try to work with our law enforcement authorities and the tech community in putting a stop to this. Now, all the way from how can smartphones be made unhackable, personal photos and videos into the cloud, and all the way to cracking down on those different porn sites. So also, Kev, please stay around for the rest of our hearing because I'm certain my colleagues will have some questions for you as well. But at this point, mga kasama, pagkatapos nating marinig sina Ana at Ria at si Kev, gusto kong unang-unang tanungin yung mga carers ng ating mga young persons, Women's Legal and Human Rights Bureau at saka Plan International. But before I ask them, kasi ang dami nating mga batas, so saan nagkukulang pa yung ating mga batas? Before I ask them that question and also ask DOJ and our other civil society orgs to address it, pwede ko bang hilingin sa COMSEC, kilalanin lang ulit yung ating mga new arrivals?
Yes, we have an additional resource person. The committee would like to acknowledge Mr. James Benedict Gutierrez of DOJ. From the Philippine Commission on Women, we have Ms. Zaira Cuevas. From the National Telecommunication Commission, we have Engineer Imelda Walson. From DSWD, we have Mr. Christian Biok. From the Department of Tourism, we have Attorney Rebecca Lopez. From the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, we have Director Jocelyn Hapal. From the Center for Gender Equality and Women's Human Rights, we have Ms. Patricia C. Then from the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women Asia Pacific, we have Attorney Cristina Sevilla. From International Justice Mission Philippines, we have Attorney Lawrence Aditao and Attorney Noel Ibalie. From Facebook, we have the Associate General Counsel James Kisumbing. From TikTok Philippines, we have Mr. Christopher Rada. From Smart Communication, we have Attorney Roy Ibay. From Angkas, we have Miss Angeline Tom. From Children's Legal Bureau, we have Attorney Noemi Abarientos. And from Bless F. Ople Policy Center and Training Institute, we have Ms. Susana Tuts Ople. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Alright, salamat COMSEC. So, pwede bang marinig mula sa Women's Legal and Human Rights Bureau at saka sa Plan International din? So, saan pa nagkukulang yung mga batas natin? We have the cybercrime law, we have the anti-child pornography law, we have the anti-voyeurism law. So, ano pa yung kulang? Saan pa yung gaps given these stories shared with us by these young people? Sinong gustong unang sumagot? Yes, Ms. Jelen, please.
Yes, good morning, Senator Risa, and magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Happy International Women's Day po. We've met Kev and Ria last year, no? During actually yung nagsimula when I think at the middle nung, pero after the lockdowns, around I think July or August, they were actually looking for a legal organization, and they approached the network, the alternative law groups, to look into their case. No, I think the challenge is the anonymity, no, that we actually raised, no, in the last Senate hearing, anonymity or of the perpetrators, and the inability to identify who is at the end of that IP address. So, and as mentioned by Ria, although the situation or the incident happened when she was still in high school, the photos are circulated even until now. No? So I think that's the common problem. And similar to what happened to Kev, we were able to take down one of the video by writing Pinay.Flix a letter and telling them that if they don't take it down, we will file a case against them. But there was no official response. So they took it down, but there was no response. No, as of I think 2 weeks ago, I'm not sure if there was an official response, Kev. No, but as far as I know, there was no response from Pinay.Flix. So it was very easy for them, and we even asked the group, no, the members of the alternative law groups to write again a letter to Pinay.Flix, because we will not allow them to just take it down and no official response, or not making them accountable. No? But then again, the challenge, Senator, is that, as mentioned by Kev, is there are just ordinary citizens. They're not celebrities. They're not known influencers. And it will really take a lot of efforts and money to really continue and file with the case. No? There were also efforts actually na pumunta naman po sila sa PNP, because actually that was our first question. Did you approach the PNP Cybercrime Lab or the NBI? But most of them sadly responded to us negatively, that they have a very bad experience. That I remember when they were telling us their stories, someone even said, si Juan de la Cruz, dati na yan ganyan rin pero hindi namin mahuli. So parang referring to a particular perpetrator who have committed several harassment online, but until now, there was no actual filing of the case. No, so I think these advocates or collective are actually trying to help survive by themselves. So what we did was to at least address the psychological needs of the group, but they really wanted to file a case, and that's the reason why we thought that being part of the Senate hearing might help. Number one, to help in the investigation for those who are willing to file a case, because as far as I know, as mentioned by Ria and Kev, there are other victims also. There are other victims who are ready to file a case, but they want, in a way, an assurance that their case will be handled sensitively and no victim blaming, because most of them actually let's say, whether not everybody knows, some of them actually agreed to have that photo with their intimate partners. They trusted that their intimate partner will take care of that photo and would not share it with the others, thinking that there's love and trust. At the end of the day, that love and trust did not prevail. No, so ang nangyayari, ang response ay, ba't mo kasi ginawa? Ba't ka kasi pumayag? So I think those kind of comments are what we wanted really to avoid, and that's why when we ask them, okay, we will call this person, we have to assure them. We always have to assure them that we have properly talk to some private investigators. So we have actually talking to a private investigator who is in a way familiar with the technological developments in ICT. Kaya lang marami pa rin kasi nga when they tried to collect the evidence or when they tried to help the other victim survivors, there are other aspects kasi, Senator, how the evidence was saved. Sinave ba siya, inopen ba siya ng marami? So ini-explain nung tech expert. And I think yun yung medyo hindi rin alam. Not everybody knows how to save digital evidence properly. So for example, if I save your photo now, it should be saved in a proper, for example, as PDF. And it should not be open to ensure that it will not be modified. Our tendency is to open it and open it and open it. So it will eventually jeopardize the preservation of evidence. And not everyone knows how to preserve an evidence, especially for young people like Kev and Ria. No? And siguro, yung iba pa po. So I think yun yung mga challenges na madalas because sometimes the evidence are not enough to really file a case. And maybe some of our text experts here can actually explain what is the problem when it comes to preservation of evidence because those I think are the nitty-gritty of filing a case where digital evidence are involved po. So ibang-iba siya na hindi sapat yung testimony ng biktima. There are other things that has to be considered when filing a case related to anti-photo and video voyeurism. And I remember in one of the discussion, the tendency of most of the victims is to take down the pictures, the video. So pag na-take down na, as mentioned last time, there are no available evidence anymore. But I think that's the challenge.
Tama kayo, Ms. Jelen. Sinabi din yan ni Attorney Angeline ng NBI last time, at least 2 general sets of evidence at yung mga paraan para obligahin yung particular platform na yan to preserve, no, for purposes of investigation and
So
prosecution.
yung problem, ma'am, which will go first? The takedown for your own sanity or to preserve the evidence? And then if you properly preserve the evidence, I hope it will not happen in this country, but in other countries they would say, or because she preserved this evidence because sextortionist siya or she's trying to extort. So in some other countries, those kind of justification has been used. No, I remember one particular case in Thailand, ganun yung ginawang justification ng perpetrator against. So I think that's the nitty-gritty one. So yun lang po, ma'am. Thank you.
Salamat, Ms. Jelen. And precisely, it's those kinds of victim blaming na gusto din nating baguhin. Una, dahil mali in principle. Pangalawa, hindi talaga nakakatulong to stop the crimes and then to bring justice to the victim survivors or to those who suffer these crimes. Bago ko tanungin yan din, no, sa Plan International, a quick question, no, regarding dun sa sinabi ni Ms. Jelen sa anonymity of the perpetrators. Ito tanong ko sa DOJ Cybercrime, pati sa NTC. Ano ba yung mga barriers kaya hindi natin mabasag-basag itong anonymity ng mga perpetrators? Would DOJ Cybercrime like to take the question first? Would it be State Councilor Quintana? Or Attorney Angeline, please. So glad that you're with us again in the continuation of this hearing. Good morning. Please, yes.
Ma'am, this is Attorney. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Attorney, please proceed.
Right.
Attorney Angeline, medyo mahina yung connection nyo. But I'd really like to hear from you on this point. Attorney Angeline, are you able to fix your audio? Yes. Okay, that's better. Please proceed.
Hello?
Yes, Attorney Angeline, we can hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please. Go on.
the anonymity, ma'am, of the perpetrator is one of the biggest challenges, not only in OSAEC cases, but in all cybercrime cases. But specifically when we are dealing with a case that social in a social media platform. For example, there is a perpetration of the crime that ginamitan ng social media account. Most often than not, if a cyber criminal wouldn't really use his true name. So he would just input hindi totoong subscriber information. So for example, if the law enforcement, PNP and NBI, even if they would get the name of the account, the subscriber, if kahit na makuha niya yung subscriber information from the social media platform, it wouldn't really lead to a good evidence that would directly lead them who is the perpetrator of the crime. So what they would do, ma'am, in that sense, after getting the subscriber information and traffic data, ang isa pa kasi nilang makukuha from service providers like Facebook would be IP address. So as mentioned earlier by one of our resource speaker, if yung IP address na nakuha natin sa isang social media platform, we would lalapit tayo sa internet service providers, like for example, Globe and Smart, and ask them who used this IP address during this time. And currently, ma'am, medyo nahihirapan tayo in getting that information from internet service providers because of technological limitations that I hope they could discuss later on so we can help them also hurdle that technical limitation. But basically that's the summary kung bakit tayo nahihirapan. Kasi the perpetrator wouldn't really give her true name or true identity whenever creating a social media account and gagamitin niya. And our only lead would be IP address. Lalapit tayo sa internet service providers and there is technical limitation on their part in order to provide us to give us leads as to that. Yes. So in case building, ma'am, medyo mahihirapan na because the first thing that you would really see in filing a case would be sino ba yung kinakasuhan mo? Who is the perpetrator? How would you attribute the crime to someone na hindi mo na ma-identify? So yun po, ma'am. Thank you.
Salamat, Attorney Angeline. Mukhang nagiging klaro, no? Ang kailangan natin gawin, address on the tech side, the tech limitations na sinasabi nyo make it difficult for investigation and prosecution. So that dito naman po sa side ninyo ng law enforcement, you will be enabled to do that case build-up, including gathering the necessary evidence to bring justice to the victim survivors or those who suffer those crimes and put a stop to the criminal activities of those criminals, make them accountable. Pagdako ko sa NTC, ibahin ko ng konti yung tanong, no? Referring also to what were related to us by Ria and Kev, pati ni Ana. It seems, no, to address sa NTC, it seems that victim survivors have to make a terrible choice. Nabanggit na rin natin ito nung unang hearing. A terrible choice between calling for takedown and thereby having immediate peace of mind, but risking losing the evidence, no, or preserving that evidence for investigation and prosecution purposes, pero andyan pa rin yung material. Umiikot pa rin sa universe na yan. So for NTC, wala bang paraan or ano ang paraan? Ano ang mga paraan both to take down and yet preserve evidence? So serving the interests of the victim survivors and our law enforcement authorities. Could we hear please from NTC?
Good morning po, ma'am. Good morning po sa lahat.
Good morning. Yes, Engineer Walshen, good to have you here, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, in our submission to the chair, we have indicated under the duties and responsibilities of the private sector, wherein once a request for blocking or removal of website is done, immediately, at the same time, simultaneously, the provider has to preserve the evidence. Now, ma'am, at this stage, we would like to submit to the committee that we have the International Telecommunications Union, particularly the Development Bureau, who issued guidelines. I just who issued guidelines, ma'am, for industry on child online protection. This is issued 2020. Likewise, we have guidelines for policymakers on child online protection. If the committee may consider to read the contents of these guidelines, so that when we finally craft the duties and responsibilities of what we call internet intermediaries, which we have also submitted the definitions and terms that we propose to be included in the bill. Maybe the committee may consider furthering the duties and responsibilities we have initially included in our submission. Ma'am, these two
Gladly do
guidelines,
that.
these guidelines issued by the ITU is crafted by experts internationally. So, with that, ma'am, yung tanong nyo kanina, what could be the challenge? First is we don't have registration in the Philippines. 95% of mobile phones, which is used also for mobile broadband, we don't have registration. Second, we don't have registration for most of the social media intermediaries. Only we have registration only for value-added service providers. Nandoon po yung internet service provider who provides access to the internet, but not necessarily not necessarily that they be able to see the contents, but the contents would be posted by either one, the user of the service, or two, the content provider itself. So maraming pong challenges, ma'am, but I hope with the information given by NTC for the honorable committee to read the two guidelines, I hope we would have a better listing of what should be the duties and responsibilities of all the internet intermediaries, not only the ISP or the content host, but all others po.
Salamat, Engineer Imelda. This committee will certainly positively consider the inclusion of those guidelines. I think what we really need to do moving forward i-identify at subukan sa abot ng ating makakaya to close those gaps both on the tech side as you are describing and on the law enforcement side para pag magawa nating mas mahigpit yan, both can mutually support each other in order to put a stop to these crimes and better protect those who experience them or who become victim survivors. And speaking of experts, I see Mr. Ace Deloy of Stairway Foundation raising his hand. He's considered an expert on OSAEC by the Child Rights Network. So I'll recognize you now, Mr. Deloy. Please keep your response focused on the questions at hand.
Good morning, Senator.
Deloy?
Yes, good
Yes,
morning.
good
Good morning,
morning.
Senators.
Yes.
So
Please proceed.
just to share on the challenges. So Stairway Foundation, we started working on this issue around 14 years ago in the Philippines, and we actually saw the same pattern, particularly the cross-platform sharing. Like more than a decade ago, it was offline content development, and then moving towards website, and then moving towards pirated DVDs across Quiapo, and then being re-uploaded again in online platforms. And this was, 14, 13 years ago. Unfortunately, more than a decade working on this issue, we're still talking about it until eventually it evolved into sexual exploitation with the commercial nature, and also like what Anna, Ria, and Kevin shared bravely a while ago. So our work mostly focuses on prevention, trying to empower potential victims by building up their protective behavior. So we work primarily with the Department of Education and the SWD. However, as a child protection organization, we realize that prevention is just really one part of the whole equation. And really, if we want to address long-lasting impact, we must look at this whole problem from a demand point of view. We must look at the demand portion. Because as long as there are offenders, there will be victims. Because at the end of the day, it's not the victim's fault. It's the
Right.
offender's fault, right?
Mm,
So
right.
of course there are certain technology limitations in going after offenders, like what was mentioned a while ago. You get a IP address in the Philippines, but we're all basically IPv4, which means
Mm,
one IP address might potentially be shared by thousands of subscribers, as opposed to IPv6, for example,
yes.
wherein you can pinpoint specific subscribers. So
Mm.
there are technology limitations like that, which I guess the NTC, the ICT can help fast track in addressing in order to
So
help
you mean,
the
Sir
law
Ace,
enforcement.
shifting to IPv6 would help break the anonymity of perpetrators?
I'm not a very technical person, but based on what
Okay.
we saw from research, it will help at least,
Okay.
because that will limit like the pool of IPv addresses that can mas madaling matrack basically, right? So I'm not privy to the shift towards to IPv6 in the Philippines. However, also on the legislative side, uh, there are certain provisions of existing laws which is not maximized actually.
Mm,
For example, case in point, the anti-child pornography law, which was passed in 2009, there are
mhm,
certain provisions there which are very progressive. For example, there's a section there which prohibits or criminalizes luring and grooming of children.
mhm,
So from an offender, from a child protection perspective, no. So you have the actual sexual offense, like for
mhm,
example, the having children undressed and sexually abused and recorded via the webcam or cell phones. But
yes,
from a child protection point of view, you also have preparatory acts.
yes,
This is the grooming. These are the initial behaviors of offenders toward victims in order to manipulate children towards committing such behaviors for sexual abuse.
yes.
Now, in RA 9775, grooming and luring is defined, and those are the preparatory acts. It is
Mhm,
criminalized under 9775. So, for example,
mhm,
in 9775, grooming is defined as the act of preparing a child or someone who the offender believes to be a child for purposes of sexual activity later on, like production of child sexual abuse material, etc. However,
mhm,
in our experience working on this issue for more than a decade, we haven't had any one conviction yet or a case yet of grooming filed.
okay.
It's always waiting for the actual sexual abuse to happen, when in fact, that very provision of the law could be a proactive one, because you can
Yes.
actually entrap potential offenders before they get to actually commit the offense.
Mm.
So,
Sorry,
aside from
sorry. No, I
yeah,
need to cut your
yes.
presentation at this point because I need to move to our other private sector resource persons as well. But please isubmit nyo yung inyong position paper sa committee. And I hope, Sir Ace, are you still there? I hope that you can also participate in the technical working group precisely to address also this matter of existing progressive provisions in the laws we are seeking to amend para maging digital era appropriate, no, and how we can bring them up to speed. Sir Ace, can you do that for the committee?
Yes po, thank you, Senator.
Okay. Salamat po. Salamat sa inyo, Mr. Diloy. So, at this point, friends, I'd like us to hear from our private sector resource persons. For example, Facebook asked for permission to make a presentation. I will ask them to do that in a moment. I also believe Senator Kiko will have a few questions to ask of you as well. So, Facebook, could you please proceed? Who will make the presentation?
Good morning, Senator Risa.
Yes, Ms. Claire, Ms. Amador. All right, please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, honorable members of the committee, and to everyone present here, our colleagues in the child safety space. Thank you for inviting us to join today's hearing and for having been allowed time to present. I also want to acknowledge Anna, Ria, and Kev's story. We want you to know that we hear you and that we see you. So safety is a top priority for us at Facebook, and we appreciate spaces like this to address questions, get feedback, and to share info about our work and see how the company has evolved from 10 years ago, and we still hope to improve. We want to let everyone know that we invest heavily in people, tools, and programs to safeguard our community and devote significant resources to ensure our platform offers a safe and positive experience, especially for children. We have built relationships with over 500 online safety orgs globally, including specialists in the prevention of bullying and child exploitation and in supporting victims. My colleague Amber Hawks, head of safety for APAC, will present more information about our work with our peers in the private sector, government, NGOs, some of them are present here, and also law enforcement locally and around the globe. But before we get there, just to take a step back, at the onset, please know that we support and encourage the right and appropriate regulatory framework for child safety, the one that provides for a systems-based approach that enables various platforms, to develop solutions suited to their particular service and community. We also support having a holistic approach to child safety, as it requires a broader societal response beyond regulation and should include, among others, user education, digital literacy, and victim remediation. So not many people are aware of the extensive work around safety that Facebook does, and I am here alongside a few members of our team to address queries and to share information. We are committed to working with this committee to craft the appropriate policies. And so I will now invite my colleague Amber to talk a bit more about our work. Maraming salamat po.
Salamat, Ms. Claire. Ms. Amber, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senators. I just flagged that my colleague, Mr. Chris Kujapili, needs access to share my slides. So it would be great if he could be given permission to share a deck.
Comsec, paki-enable lang makashare si Mr. Kuzupili. Are you able to share screen now, Ms. Amber?
Chris, can you share? Just checking.
Yeah, Mr. Kuzupili.
Not quite yet, he's saying. But I'm just going to hopefully that rectifies, and I'll just share because I don't want to take up any more time.
All right, please begin then.
Great, thank you. So just to start with, as Claire mentioned, it's very much a commitment of ours to keep people safe on our services. More than 35,000 people work on security and safety at Facebook, including experts in law enforcement and child protection. We're focused in particular on 3 areas when we approach online safety: prevention, as has been discussed here already, detection, and response. And so we want to prevent the harm from happening before it occurs wherever possible. It's much better to stop it before than to detect it after the fact. And of course, then we want to keep detecting it as it happens and then respond to it promptly. And the way that we do the work in those areas is to work across 4 pillars. One is our partnerships. The next is our policies. That's our community standards, what is and isn't allowed on the platforms. And our tooling, which is both the user-facing tooling and also our artificial intelligence and machine learning that operates to detect violating content. And then our resources that we are providing education to people during in-app, but also resources to victim survivors as well. We have partnered with many locally in the Philippines and continue to do so with ministries such as the Department of Education, Department of ICT, with Stairway, with IJM, Save the Children, Child Rights Network, and many organizations that help us inform our approach to our policies and our tooling and our resources. Just a note in response to, the many inputs that we've heard today, and really appreciate and also say that we hear the stories and the testimony that have been shared by victim survivors here, that our policies, our community standards do not allow any form of child exploitation. So we remove all content that's located that depicts or promotes child sexual exploitation. We don't allow grooming, as Ace was just sharing. We don't allow grooming, so solicitation of sexual images or content or engagement in text between minors and adults. And of course, this includes not allowing sextortion, which is one of the examples that we heard earlier of the blackmailing and the threats to share the images are against our policy, even without the actual images being shared. So it goes beyond this, in that our policies are comprehensive. We don't even allow child nudity, for example, of toddlers in the bath. Some people might think that's innocuous, but we don't want that to be misappropriated and abused by others. And we also have policies that prevent the sharing and require the removal of any content that's used for human exploitation, which is human trafficking, child sex trafficking, anything that actually would be content covering the recruitment, the facilitation, or the exploitation. And this, of course, covers illegal adoption of babies as well, this policy. We don't allow sex offenders on our platforms either. So if we're informed by law enforcement, this was a point raised earlier about sex offender registries. If we have knowledge that the sex offender is on our site, then we will remove them and prevent them from recreating accounts. And of course, one of the big topics today, we have policies around authenticity, requiring people to use their authentic identity on Facebook so that we can limit the abuse. And in fact, last quarter alone removed 1.3 billion fake accounts using our technology.
Amber, if I could just quickly jump in with a follow-up question to Ria about something you just mentioned.
Sure.
Thank you. Ria, so Facebook says they don't allow sextortion or blackmailing or threats. Did you try to report those Facebook chats to Facebook?
Yes, I did. This was back in 2013, so I don't think their direct legal assistance was as quick as it is now. I actually went to the NBI first, but they told me that to get a legal verification request to Facebook through the DOJ, it would have taken 6 months.
All right. Thank you, Ria. And maybe we'll get back to NBI about that later as well. Salamat. Ms. Amber, please proceed.
Thank you, Ria. And yes, we have been working very hard over the last several years to improve our response in this space. And I think what I can point to right now is that we have our user reports that notify us of content, but we also have been upgrading and implementing our technology that proactively identifies this kind of content to be able to remove it. So, Chris, I can see you have the presentation. So if you can go to slide 9, that'd be great. We remove we detect the content using artificial intelligence or user reports. Most of those, whether that's flagged, either way, it's reviewed within 24 hours in most cases. And of the 35,000 people that we have working with us, over 15,000 are content reviewers. They work 24/7 on a follow the sun model in over 50 languages to review that content. And of course, some cases require language capacity, such as grooming, maybe to understand what's going on, but others, such as images, don't really require, language capacity at all, and so they can be reviewed by any of our content reviewers. So, technology is, of course, our business, and we use it to prevent and detect and respond to these areas of, child sexual exploitation and human trafficking. For example, we're one of the early adopters of photo DNA. We've been using it since 2011. When a photo is found to be of child sexual exploitation, the content is deleted, the account is taken down, and we report it to the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children. And then in turn, NECMEC works with law enforcement agencies around the world to refer that back out and help find and rescue victims and inform investigations. We actually use one of the largest databases of image hashes for this kind of imagery in the world. And then when we use our own artificial intelligence to detect new, as not yet known child exploitation imagery that pops up on the platform, we can then also add those hashes to our database so that those images cannot be reshared again across our platforms. And then we also use our artificial intelligence to identify potential grooming, and so that we can remove accounts engaged in that, and to do what we call, you can see on the next slide, black holing links that are associated. So maybe some of these other sites that were mentioned today might have, a collection of images on them, and we would routinely prevent or black hole access to those links from Facebook and our services. And we will also use our technology to interrupt searches and limit the discoverability of, say, minor accounts, and also to upsell now that reporting and that education element that we've seen is so critical, so that people know they can report, they know what options are available to them. You can just see on the next slide very quickly what this safety and search looks like. If someone was to go in and search for, a child abuse term for that kind of content, this pop-up comes up instead of delivering results, sharing with them the impact of child abuse material, that it's illegal, and referring them in fact to resources if they have their own, thoughts about sexual thoughts about children, that they can get help. The next slide shows you the kind of pop-up that I'm talking about within Messenger. When there's suspicious activity, our systems might detect a potentially harmful interaction between an adult and a minor, and then this pop-up would occur to say, do you know this person? If they do not, then they're directed to further education about how to report and recognize harassment. This technology.
Ms. Amber, do you have similar safeguards for your other messaging app, WhatsApp? Because after all, these two, Messenger and WhatsApp, are the main of your platforms anyway that make it easier to distribute exploitative material. So do you have similar safeguards for WhatsApp?
WhatsApp content is encrypted within the message. However, there are safety notices that pop up in WhatsApp saying, a new contact is made, an account created, and a notice will pop up notifying someone immediately, do they want to report or block this account?
Okay.
So that's how it operates on WhatsApp.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
This technology is particularly important to detection because we can see in our last community standards enforcement report that in the last quarter of 2020, we removed 5.4 million pieces of child nudity and sexual exploitation content. 98.8% of that was removed before it was reported to us. And it's important to note when I share these large numbers that the prevalence of this content, thankfully, is still very low. So out of every 10,000 views of content on Facebook, we would estimate that no more than 5 of those views contained content that would violate this policy. We've talked a lot about, our cooperation with law enforcement already from the other presentations, and I just wanted to clarify how we work in this space.
Ms. Amber, if you don't mind, I'd just like to call Sen Kiko to raise a point. Yes, Sen Kiko.
Yes. Of this 5.4 million pieces of content removed, would you have data as to the Philippines? Because the information that we have received from the UN and children's advocacy and welfare rights groups is that we are actually a leading entity the country in terms of trafficking and exploitation of children. So
San Kiko, we're actually called a global hotspot.
Precisely. So, that 5.4 million that you removed may look small, in the context of the entire world, but how much of that is from the Philippines? If 30% or 20% of that would be from the Philippines, I don't know. Then that's not a small number for us.
Yeah, understood. We don't have those figures per country. Often what those figures are based on is a report that the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children does put out, numbers per country of the cyber tips that have resolved back to the Philippines. And I'll explain what that means. So in the next slide, you can see how it works actually. So
But Ms. Amber, speaking of NECMEC and related to San Kiko's question, I remember in the first hearing it was also brought up that NECMEC automatically reports to the US side, but doesn't yet at least automatically report to the Philippine side. And I remember that our law enforcement authorities had the desire that they in fact also automatically report to the Philippines, so that the important data that San Kiko was asking about should immediately be at our fingertips.
Yes. So in fact, that data is automatically available currently to Philippines law enforcement. It's accessible through the NECMEC case management tool, which sits with the Department of Justice. And I'm sure that my colleague Rob can jump in to clarify. But you can see here on the screen that basically what happens is an incident occurs, say that it's detected online, the report is made to the NECMEC cyber tip line, it's prioritized, based on severity and urgency and the value of it. Additional value is added to try and find the location or the reported user. Then NECMEC system will find the appropriate jurisdiction that it relates to, and then the report will be made back out to the local jurisdiction in the Philippines. And as I said, that sits currently with the DOJ, and they have access to that through the NECMEC case management tool currently. Those cyber tips they include information, as we've discussed, like an IP address, phone number, and email address in some cases, things that can provide law enforcement with, helpful investigative leads to find and rescue the victims. We've heard about the next step of the process, where they obviously law enforcement needs to go and do their investigation to home in, but this is information that supports those investigations. And I'll jump into clarify really quickly what these numbers are before I
just to that point.
Yes,
Yes, please, San Kiko.
Just very quickly, just an observation, because as was pointed out earlier by the chair, our DOJ NBI representative felt or manifested otherwise, that so there has to be, there seems to be the right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing, because Facebook says this is available to the DOJ, but the NBI says, or at least a representative of the NBI said in the previous hearing, that the reporting of Facebook is to the US-based NMEC and not to the Philippines. So we will have to clarify this with the DOJ, Madam Chairperson, just putting it out there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, San Kiko. So, Ms. Amber, could you continue and maybe wrap up?
Yes, sure. Just to make the quick point that of these millions of, pieces of content that we're talking about, important to note that more than 90% of that is actually, reshares of content previously reported. That means we are catching it, but what it means is that in these numbers of millions of reports, the technology that registers each report and hashes each of the image registers those as, distinct images, whereas to the human eye, those images would actually be the same. So the good news about this, of course, is that, there's a lot lower number of images than the number of reports that we do hear about. And Of course, any number of reports is problematic, and we will continue to work on that on our side and have to work as an ecosystem to address that. But it's important to know like the real situation, I think. And the other part of it is that many of the reports involve people sharing with non-malicious intent. This is really critical because it helps us to just, target as an ecosystem, all of us, our interventions. And I just wanted to make a quick note here, the kind of interventions that we have looked at and are working towards now in relation to, some of the stories that we heard before. One of them, for example, is how do we support children more? One way we can do this is with a pilot that we've run when there is what we call self-generated child exploitation imagery, for example. We're looking at ways and have run a pilot where people can actually proactively report that they're worried this could get out there. We can actually take through this process a digital fingerprint of that image and prevent it from ever being reshared because we want to prevent it from getting out of control. And as we've heard today from being shared across platforms. And one of the ways we could do this in the future through NECMAC potentially is really important because NECMAC is able to share those hashes across industry, which again makes it harder for those images to jump and then appear on other platforms if more technology companies participate in that. And so just to wrap up, I did want to just focus on the fact that we, beyond providing resources on our safety centre, such as information for, survivors of sextortion and the sharing of non-consensual intimate images and how they might preserve evidence. We have safety centres and help centres for those. We have programming in relation to education and digital literacy and online safety risks that we've engaged with our partners in the Philippines and around the world. I wanted to finish on a final point about that cooperation with law enforcement. And that is that, Chris, if you can go back to slide 20, this is what, I think you raised a point that there needs to be clarity on who receives these reports. There is a case management tool that allows for triaging of these reports for local law enforcement. Our role is to think through how do we help law enforcement prioritise and classify these cyber tips ahead of time so that they can then go out and investigate. And then I'll ask Rob just to jump in for this last slide, just to talk about collaboration with law enforcement.
And Senators, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Amber. Okay, Mr. Abrams, you have the floor. Could you, I wonder if you could do this in one more minute, so just so we can move to some follow-up questions for Facebook. Please proceed.
No problem. The way sort of things are set up now is I work directly with the various anti-cybercrime task forces when they send to me matters like sextortion or child exploitation that is not going to involve a data request. So they will send public safety matters directly to me that I then action by getting to our safety teams. This is what you referred to earlier in our meeting as the takedown requests. The frustration I think we all have in the Republic of the Philippines is the laws in your country are such that agencies like PNP and NBI require a full-on search warrant for access to basic subscriber information. That's that user data, for instance, in reports or what's responsive to Philippines legal process. I think it would be best for the communities that we're trying to serve in the Philippines if law enforcement had a method that's perhaps extrajudicial and more in line with the modern cybercrime threat. So there are other markets, for example, here in ASEAN that don't require a full-on search warrant, but a summons will do or a subpoena will do. In some markets, just a police letter will do. And of course, the guardrails are such that we use these specifically for child exploitation and human trafficking cases. And it allows the police to be a whole lot more nimble. I will agree with what our colleague said earlier that, handing over IP addresses isn't necessarily the panacea, the silver bullet, but it does allow law enforcement to move their case progress along far more quickly. than the current system, which requires a very arduous search warrant. We can have an automated system that many law enforcement agents in your country would be aware of called LEORS. It's an automated intake for legal process, so search warrants, subpoenas, that type of thing. We can also accept preservation requests through that, and even emergency requests. There are times when lawful and appropriate, we will proactively escalate real emergencies to law enforcement, including the PNP. And agents, or rather positions like mine, are constantly engaging with PNP and NBI. I think just in the last half, we did 3 trainings for NBI. So yeah, it's an ongoing relationship that certainly has room to grow. But I think the fact that we're all constantly looking to sit down and brainstorm the way forward is not only exciting, it's definitely the interest of public safety. But for me, I really think law enforcement could have a better, less arduous way to access data than they currently have. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Abrams, and thank you also for pointing out how safeguards remain important in terms of protecting civil liberties and while enabling more effective law enforcement in order to protect children and minors. Please do stay around. The same, Ms. Amber, because I do have, and I believe my colleagues have, further questions for or about Facebook. But I know that our Google resource person has to leave shortly. So could I just ask at least a question? There I see Attorney Gonzalez. Google Drive, attorney, was used to store child abuse, exploitation material in the cases of Kevin and Ria, no, for minors as well. How does Google deal with this? The misuse of the Google Drive?
Thank you. Thank you. So Google does remove content from Google Drive as soon as it is reported to us. So we recommend that people who experience this should file a report using the legal reporting mechanism available to all our users.
It has to be on the instance of the victim survivor herself or himself? O
Not
wala bang
necessarily,
proactive na pagmamonitor ang Google?
Not necessarily, ma'am. So if a concerned citizen or any concerned party wants to file a ticket or a report, it does not need to be at the instance of the victim in the situation.
All right, but still it has to come from outside Google. Kumbaga, you don't have any internal proactive monitoring to make sure that Google Drive isn't used for such exploitative materials.
We'd like to reserve our answer to that in our position paper because it is a technical matter, and we will submit a position paper that explains the intricacies regarding how machine learning can be used for Google Drive.
Thank you, Attorney Gonzalez. The committee will anticipate that position paper. Please bear in mind yung concern natin to bring the tech and the law enforcement sides closer together, since this was identified by our different resource persons, including Ria herself, the 2 major areas that have to work together effectively to stop these crimes and to bring justice to the victim survivors.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Yes, and before you leave, Attorney, Sen Kiko, I would like to also raise some points. Sen Kiko.
Yes, just to pursue that point about a more proactive response, rather than just rely on reports. I would like to think that Google, being a billion-dollar company, should look to more proactive responses. The difficulty with reporting, as was earlier manifested in some of the experiences, it'll take several months. But if there is a proactive immediate takedown response from Google and all other media platforms. The term is immediate takedown, and relying on reporting alone, I think, is less than ideal, considering that you have the technology and you have the resources. Relying on the citizens to be vigilant is great, because they ought to be vigilant, but the technology out there is sometimes just too powerful and too overwhelming for one or two individuals to be able to respond effectively. So
If
that's
I
the
could
challenge.
add to that, Sen Kiko, because the chair shares Sen Kiko's assessment. After all, virality is the business of the social media platforms, and when it's a good thing, it's great. You know, it can spark, say, like people power events, but when the virality is in aid of this kind of exploitation, then it becomes really what our resource persons described earlier, no, Sen Kiko, it becomes like a lifetime nightmare because the material is out there in the universe and through the virality can, take on a life of its own and just become overwhelming.
Which brings you to one question or one issue: the right to be forgotten. When Ria was talking about her experience 10 years ago, it's as if it was just last week. But precisely because of information communication technology and digital technology, anything that happened 10 years ago can just come back to you as if it happened yesterday, because of the sharing and resharing, etc. So these are reporting alone, I think, is a cop out. In fact, law enforcement by itself is already, rather than prevention, it's already the cure. And we all know the saying that the prevention is better than cure. So I guess part of prevention is immediate takedown, because you prevent the spread, you prevent the potentially billions of your subscribers or your to have access to that information that is private to one individual.
Yes, Sen Kiko. And Attorney Gonzalez, before you respond to Sen Kiko's point, I see you have something up here. But friends, please allow me to flash something that our office received just now involving minors sharing their videos in exchange for study or for load. So it says here, hi, I'm an RPer. There's this secret word in FB, Facebook, na created years ago, mostly po teenagers kami doon. We call it RPW, or Role Player World. We make a dummy account. Or fake. Basta gumagamit kami ng ibang info pero hindi po kami nagpo-poser. Hidden po talaga ang identity ng mga RPer. Then, in RPW, meron RR or yung red room or Bune room. Lahat ng hindi pwede sa bata nandun. You can search it on FB. It's a group page, madami yon. In that page, madaming teenagers ang nagbebenta ng nudes. Mga vids nila or VC in exchange of money or load for study at this time of online learning, or for some other reasons, yung iba dahil gusto lang nila, and sadly, I'm one of those teenagers. So this is the one who sent us this. I do it for money, but I'm using other accounts. Back din, tumigil din po ako last year. Then I deleted that account. I make another RP account. Honestly, this world is our escape from reality na puro hirap lang. One of my clients before, nag-chat sa uli sa akin. Di ko alam kung nakilala niya po ako or ano, basta naging kami dito. Tinatakot niya po ako na ikakalat yung mga video kapag di ko sinusunod ang gusto niya. Palagi po ako nagdadahilan. Nagpapanggap na mahal ko siya at okay kami. Di naman talaga, please po, help niyo po ako. So this person is observing our hearing, no? Kahit hindi siya makasuhan, kung meron man po. Basta po yung about sa videos, alam ko po may kasalanan din ako, pero para yun po awa, ayoko na ng mga pinapagawa niya. Kung mapapansin nyo man ito. So, just to get back to you, Attorney Gonzalez, Sen Kiko was just asking, will you continue just to rely on individual reporting or another concerned person reporting? Pag ganitong kaso, imagine ino-observe lang yung hearing natin, nalaman na nandito kayo, mga social media platforms, and humihingi siya talaga ng saklolo. So okay, get back to your presentation now and please address Sen Kiko's question. I'm sorry, this was Facebook, okay? Speaking of
thank you po.
What's mentioned earlier about sharing across platforms. So this is for Facebook. Attorney Gonzalez, if you wouldn't mind, Miss Amber, would you like to address this?
Yes, I mean, we do run proactive detection across our groups. Facebook groups and other surfaces across Facebook that detect words related to solicitation and abuse. And so that is something that we're constantly working to update. But another thing that I think is really critical here is an understanding by those sharing and also by those receiving of the impact of what is actually happening and of the illegality of it potentially as well. One of the new things that we have just introduced is a safety alert in Messenger. And this is actually if someone has shared non-maliciously, potentially they've forwarded on some kind of image like that to someone else, they get an education about the impact of that sharing and its illegality. Because I'm hearing what the Senator was saying earlier about prevention and the need to bring down the number of these images circulating, and that is essentially a prevention as well. So these are the types of intervention that we're continuing to introduce that would actually upsell education on the impact and the reporting of this content, and hopefully deter people from sharing, as well as at the same time continuing a proactive detection of the content and bring it down.
Thank you, Ms. Amber. I think our committee will need to work with you on this particular case. This is a young person, a student, observing our hearing who is asking for help. So we'll leave it at that for now. But we
Madam
also
Chair?
check now. Yes, Sen Aimee, I will call you right away. Just to tell the whole committee. It's all right, no problem, Sen Aimee. Just to tell the whole committee that we check now, and Red Room Biyun, which was communicated by that young person, is open and active. So, and there are, at this moment, there are 7,000 members in the room. So, wow, really. All right, Sen Aimee, please.
Yes, I'm very deeply concerned about this problem, as you're well aware, and I'm also getting any number of texts as we speak, Madam Chair, just like you. And I think it's incumbent upon us to urgently pass the amendments to the child code as well as the trafficking laws, so that we can hold ISPs jointly and severally liable if necessary, impose prison sentences, and not just meager fines, because they don't seem to frighten off anyone. Yesterday, in a hearing about the OFWs, for example, I'd like to share with the chairwoman and Senator Kiko our alarm at the fact that illegal recruitment has gone out of fashion, which is the good news. The bad news, however, is that trafficking is on the uptick. And trafficking and essentially human bondage and slavery has really become very prevalent. And what is most depressing is perhaps the misery of the conviction number. Senator Kiko, out of 57 preliminary investigations in 2019, dalawa lang ang na-convict. So talagang napaka-miserable nito. I'm certain that in cyberspace, this will be even more difficult. I wanted to mention also what the kids are now calling, tinitext po sa akin, revenge porn as a whole other subsector. And the concern of the DOJ as well as the police is the fact that so many of the perpetrators are in fact minors. So we have to think very, very well about how they should be punished, if it's only Facebook that has responsibility, or if in fact the state and we through new laws can actually put a stop to this new fashion, as it were. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much also, Sen Aimee. Currently, the bill thinks of children involved in this, doing the self-generated material that Ms. Amber mentioned, as victims, not as perpetrators. But we'll look very closely into rehabilitation of these children with the inputs of Sen Aimee and all colleagues here. Attorney Gonzalez, if you're still here, yes, I see you still here. Could you please respond to the points raised earlier by Sen Kiko? I believe you had something up on the screen also to share with the committee.
Thank you. So we agree that proactiveness is part of our responsibility. So just as an example, on YouTube, in the fourth quarter of 2020, 9.3 million videos were removed for policy violations, with 8.8 or 94% of those being removed automatically. They were automatically detected by our systems through machine learning technology, while the rest were flagged by users, trusted flaggers, NGOs, and government agencies. So for this reporting period, 41% of the videos removed were for violations of our child safety policies. So we do agree that proactiveness is definitely important in this battle that we're facing.
Thank you, Attorney Gonzalez, and to you, Sen Kiko's word. It's good that we should be more proactive. Maybe you could break the figures down for the committee, even if in submission in writing, how much of this is accounted for by activity in the Philippines, virtual space. Okay, there was something else I wanted to share with you, but I lost my train of thought there. It's okay. So I'll return to that point later. But I'd like to ask DOJ to, oh yes, Sen Kiko, before I ask DOJ to respond to something of Sen Ivy. Go, Sen Kiko. Yes, please.
A quick clarification. Do you have data from Google of the can we have that slide again? 8.8 million that were taken down as a follow-through. How many of those taken down eventually was up again using another? You have what, several years of experience in this. I'd like to think you also have that data, that as soon as you bring down one, because that's the complaint, that you bring down one, they just create a new one. So my concern here is perhaps you're just running in place. I don't know. That yes, you've been able to take down 94%, but how much of that resurfaced with a new account, and are you actually able to monitor that? Because, like I said, you have several years of data out there, and it's the beauty of digital technology is the footprints are all there. It's just a matter of putting it all together, as I understand it, and and having the proper algorithms or the proper technology to be able to bring them together. So my concern is, yes, that's 94% were machine detected, 8.8 million were taken down. Maybe the next question is how many were reserved and are actively operating, because that's what the information that we are receiving on the ground. As soon as one is taken down, another one is just created, and then they go. And then and the whole technology of bots and inauthentic behavior just repeat itself. They're able to rise like a phoenix, and then you have to take them down again. My question really is, are you running in place?
Thank you for that question. So if we would be allowed to share, so CSI Match, what we do is we work with our partners in the industry such as Reddit and Adobe to have a shared industry repository of the hashes of known CSAM content. So through this, we can reduce the repetitive reviews of that known content already, as well as to speed up the detection process. And so that's on the partners and the technology side. On the NGO side naman, we also provide the content safety API that for our partner NGOs who review these potential illegal content, they're able to actually be able to prioritize and be able to triage which content should be reviewed. And so what we've seen is this has enabled NGOs to be 7 times faster in reviewing potentially CSAM content. So we do have technologies in place to especially on known CSAM content, to be able to automatically remove them, not just in our platforms, but also with our industry platforms.
Yeah. Yes, and therefore, if you have also information that will help us better understand what we're dealing with. If you have data that you've taken down 8.8 million, of that 8.8 million you took down, do you have data regarding how many of them actually resurfaced and are operating or were able to operate again and had to be reported again? I don't know if you have that data, but it would be good to have that so that we have a sense of precisely what we're dealing with in terms of all these fake accounts being sprouting left and right.
If I may add to your question, Sen Kiko, Attorney Gonzalez, do you have a way of blacklisting material that you already previously took down para hindi siya pwedeng paulit-ulit lang na i-upload ulit?
So this is what CSI Match is, ma'am. So basically with CSI Match, we already have the hash of the material. And again, we share it even with partners so that even if the partner, let's say Reddit, if the material is new to Reddit, but they already have the hash, then Reddit systems can automatically remove the material as well, even without it being reviewed on their side.
Yeah, maybe in the future you should consider that part of your yes, we've taken out in million recognize of 5 million to service just makes sense of the data because it does sound nice. You were able to bring down 8.8, but we all know that these, that the modus operandi is they just set up another account. So anyway, I just wanted that out there. The gentleman need not respond because he's already somehow clarified some of the items that I raised.
Thank you, Sen
Thank you.
Kiko. Thank you. And thank you, Attorney Gonzalez. So moving forward, we'll see how any existing best practices can be either acknowledged or included in the committee report. But certainly there are further gaps that we all want to close within and between the tech side and the law enforcement side. So could I ask DOJ to respond to one of the issues that Sen Aimee just previously raised? Should we hold ISPs liable? Anong perspective ng Justice Department dyan? Will it be USEC M or ASEC? ASEC T. Yes, please.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Senator Risa.
Yes, good afternoon.
In response to Senator Aimee's questions on the liability of the ISPs, under RA 9775, the ISPs do have some liabilities. They have some obligations that are expected of them. This includes the obligation to preserve data, the obligation to report instances of child pornography online, as well as the obligation to impose on blocking and filtering software on their impose to install such software. So, Madam Chair, no, in accordance with these obligations under 9775, there are some liabilities on the part of the ISPs.
Meaning, ASEC, if they don't preserve the data, if they don't report violations, if they don't install and operate that blocking software, that there will be penalties for these ISPs.
That is correct, Your Honor. In fact, I understand that these ISPs have recently been cited by the NTC, no, for the possibility of imposing penalties on them.
All right, thank you very much, ASEC. Could I ask?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
on
Sen
that.
Kiko, please go ahead.
Yes, regarding ISPs, again, a lot of people are watching us, I guess, and they're texting us information and they're concerned. Please ask PLD DOJ about Internet Protocol version 6. It can track specific IP addresses to deal with abusers. Ready to roll out na dapat. And then here's another one. Twitter, one of the biggest platforms for abuse of kids. Hashtags of baguettes will immediately reveal so many young boys peddling themselves. Twitter should be invited to explain, but their Philippine office not clear. In the US, such accounts are impossible. So may we know about this, what is this version 6? To track protocol, internet protocol. Would the DOJ know this?
Thank you,
What
Sen.
information we have on? Thank you, Senator. What
Please,
information we
ASEC.
have? What information we have on version 6 is reported to us by some of the members of the IACAT. This is a very technical matter, and I think one of the resource persons mentioned this earlier. But what I do remember from this is that the current version of IP technology that we use do not allow us to accurately identify which particular users are using a particular IP address. Because I understand that current IP technology, a particular IP address is shared by multiple users up to the thousands. The shift to this new form of IP technology, the IP6 that we hear of, would allow a more pinpoint identification of who the users of a particular IP address are that involve child pornography.
Thank you, Asekti. What we're using now is the IPv4, and several of our resource persons these past two hearings have said there's a need to shift to IPv6 so that the subscribers can be identified. I think we can ask Attorney Angeline of NBI to address this point.
And the
further.
telcos.
And yes, the telcos. Actually, I'd like to ask, PLDT, Globe, Smart, also to comment on holding the ISPs liable. But Attorney Angeline first, if you could please tell us a bit more about how the shift to IPv6 on the tech side can aid also the law enforcement side. Attorney Angeline, are you still here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, just Madam Chair, just a little correction. I am not from
Yes.
the FBI, but from the Office of Cybercrime, which is an
Yeah, all right.
office within the Department of Justice.
All right. Thank you. Attorney
Yes,
Angeline.
ma'am. Further to what ASECT has discussed earlier, the reason why the DOJ is advocating for the shift from IPv4 to IPv6 is because in official communications with PLDT and Globe Telecom, they attributed their failure to comply with their mandate to disclose computer data based on IP address due to the implementation of a technology, CGNAT technology. So they explained that given the exhaustion of IP addresses under the IPv4, they are constrained to use a technology na parang binabundle nila yung users. So that a lot of users are sharing one single public IPv4 address. So as a result, the internet service providers claim that they are unable to determine which of those subscribers' data among the 1,000 subscribers is using one single public address. And so nahihirapan sila in the preservation of the computer data related to the IP address and the disclosure of that preserved computer data. So we have the Office of Cybercrime has been forwarding that the implementation in the Philippines of the IPv6 is the long-term solution to the online crime attribution challenge related to the CGNAT or this limitation, because the IPv6 would offer a vast increase in the number of IP addresses, which may enable one user the use of one IP address.
Thank you, Attorney Angeline. So mukhang susi ang pag-shift sa IPv6 dun sa sinabi kanina ni Ms. Jelen na pagbasag sa anonymity ng mga perpetrators. So thank you for that additional input about that. Unfortunately, Sen Kiko, we don't have Twitter with us, but the committee notes the important information sent you about the hashtag baguettes, etc. So the committee will reach out to Twitter. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have a Philippines office yet. It's a regional office still. So, but we will reach out to them. Yes, Sen Kiko.
Yes, Madam Chairperson. Earlier you posted the screenshot of that Facebook page. May we get a response? So that, the public, apparently many people are watching, so they'd like to know. This is now a good example of what the public may learn from what actions are to be taken. So there is a complaint. The page has been identified. It's raised there. It's a Facebook page. What is Facebook going to do about it? May we have so that this will guide everyone else who feel, many others who are similarly situated and helpless and would not know what to do. This is a public hearing. This is an opportunity for Facebook to show the action that it tends to take, and so that it'll serve as an example. How quick are you going to respond to this kind of complaint?
Thank you, Sen Kiko. Yes, Miss Amber, were you able to check already the Red Room Bune, which just a few minutes ago was open and active and with 7,000 members in the room? Actually, we'll flash a new post now from this group, just to show, no? So this is the RPW Red Room now. Send sample. Mahirap na po na scam. Na-scam na ako ng 505 different sellers. Seller ka ba or what? Pagka-scammer ka ha, pa-legit check na lang po, kita no? Magkano? One night stand. Pa-isa. Hubad na babae. Ugh. Vulgar word for the sex act. And then here, sino gusto sumali sa GC ko? 17 to 19. So I suppose the ages, ha? 17 to 19 lang, makipag-VC muna sa akin para malaman ko kung matanda na o hindi. So also on the RPW Red Room. So there's, teaserhood. Avail my new contents for cheaper price. So there's a range of products and there's a price range. So, and the Red Room, bids only. So active just 18 hours ago on Messenger.
Thank you.
Yes, please, Miss Amber.
Yeah, we're following up on this as we speak right now and conducting an investigation. It's still ongoing. We should be able to respond to that at some point. But I will say too that even though we have the situation in this group where it looks like it's potentially not just minors, but adults as well, our policies will cover that, and so does our proactive protection in circumstances. But we really appreciate the report on this, and we're following up. I think it's really important for people to understand that reporting, so collaborating. Our collaboration with safety partners, some of which are obviously on this call, is really paramount, helping us to understand what we do with these partners is to help us understand the new trends, the various groups that arise. If there is something new that is not being detected, often we will work with these partners on the ground to understand what's going on. And so we'll be continuing to follow up.
Regarding your ongoing investigation, Ms. Amber, how long is your turnaround time? Meaning, how long before the committee and other stakeholders can get feedback and report on the actions taken against this activity?
Absolutely, it should be within the next 2 hours. Shouldn't be long at all. It's already actions already being taken, so and we can report back once we've finalised what's going on.
Thank you, Ms. Amber. Of course, in 2 hours, the hearing will certainly be over, but the committee looks forward to a copy of your report. I think I see or hear, can't see, but I think I hear Sen Kiko. Yes, please, Sen Kiko.
Yes, the two or three accounts that were showed, you don't get 7,500 followers overnight. Isn't there a more proactive response? Maybe if it was 2,000, perhaps Facebook could have already looked into the material and instead of waiting for it to reach 7,000. We'll work in 2 hours. That's great, and then we welcome that. But shouldn't there be a better way, and not just have to rely on reports? You have the technology. Facebook is the 5th largest company in the world, and maybe you can fund a more proactive response. I'm sorry. Again, 5,000 followers doesn't happen overnight. So it's probably been going on for quite some time. So how does that escape Facebook? How does it, and if you look at the language, they're pretty graphic, graphic enough for it to be taken down by this committee hearing. So I'm just concerned because again, on the ground, your policy is laudable, but how much of that policy is actually translated into real effective monitoring and actual immediate taking down of these. I mean, that's the long and short of it, I think.
Yes, you can see in that we also, I won't flash it up right now, but we also have a transparency report which covers the category also not only of child nudity and exploitation, but also adult as well. So you can see how much content we're actually bringing down. So the technology is bringing down a lot of content. However, I would flag that the way the technology works is that it learns each time. So each time it detects something, each time something is reported, the technology is like a baby growing up and becoming a toddler and then becoming an adult in terms of its training on how to recognize different violations in different languages and in different contexts. And so it's not perfect. It's not as perfect as the human eye looking at this every time. And so it's one of the limitations of the technology. But the more of the reports that we get, it is about the more effective that the technology becomes. So, I hear what you're saying. And just the flag, there are limitations to technology. And then we'll look into this and see, how we can take this to improve and what else can moving forward.
Thank you. And if we can have updates on what you finally will do with that 7.5 thousand followers and the account in the report. Thank you.
Yes, can I just jump in? I do have a report. The group was actually only created on the 24th of December. So these things can happen quite rapidly in our terms, in terms of the amount of followers. 24th of December 2020, to clarify. And the page has already been taken down.
All right, thank you, Ms. Amber. Senkiko, yes?
No, well, I have some other questions, but I'm still, I will yield to you, ma'am, and to whoever.
All right, thank you, Senkiko. But I just can't keep up with the chat during our hearing. But for example, Beth Angshoko of DSWP just posted that it's quite obvious that this RPW Red Room is used for OSAIC. An immediate takedown is in order. FB doesn't need hours to investigate. So there's really a lot of very strong interest in being able to take effective tech and law enforcement actions. So could we return to PLDT, Globe, and Smart to ask you to comment on holding the ISPs liable? Who will speak for PLDT? Attorney Eileen? Yes, ma'am, please.
Madam Chair, good afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
I agree with USEC, the DOJ USEC, in that RA 9775 do have certain responsibilities and appropriate penalties for ISPs. But as we have already mentioned in the several committee hearings, including the TWG, that law should already be amended to be appropriate with the times, because it only mentions ISPs, but there are a lot of other entities that do not fall within the category of ISPs. ISP technically, Your Honor, only means those provider of internet service, the pipes, those that allow one person to be able to reach a website. But the contents, the OSAIC materials and contents are in those websites, in those content providers hosted by internet content hosters. hosts, and they are not ISPs. So perhaps the folly, the difficulty in implementation of the law with respect to penalizing and holding people responsible is that the law should already be amended to put specific responsibilities and liabilities to specific companies. For example, for ISPs, their liability is definitely to block. They should be able to block when they are asked to block, when they are given a list of websites and URLs to block, they should be able to block that. They can also report, as I mentioned the last hearing, unusual data traffic in certain rural or barangay areas where there used to be no traffic, because it can be a sign of an ongoing video or live streaming of OSAIC materials. They can also, ISPs can also get in touch with like Interpol, IWF, NICMIC in order to get lists of sites and URLs to blocks, and for them to collate all this so that it does not happen again. Whether this particular contents get routed by a different mode or posted in different sites, it should be able to block that for as long as it's the same URL. So those are the things that ISPs can do. What ISPs cannot do is they cannot look into the content, Your Honor. And I think this has been explained also not just by the industry members of the industry like us, SMART and Globe also, but also by the regulators like the NTC and the DICC have already also explained the difficulty of an ISP and how the other types of internet service companies, not providers, internet companies can help, like for example, content hosts, social media platforms, etc., etc. So we took a lot of time during the last TWG in identifying this in different types of entities and what specific obligations should they be accountable for. When I believe that when this law eventually passes into a law, when this bill eventually passes into a law, it will be a better bill, it will be a better law, because this time, whoever is responsible for each type of activity that lends to the spread of all these nefarious contents will now be able to answer and be able to be penalized by the law. Your Honor, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Eileen. Yes, we need to identify towards the end of this this inquiry, this hearing, who who will be willing and able, mandated by the law, to look into the content with the full force of the law. Because, for example, the red rooms, the one we showed was just one of apparently several. All red rooms are public groups, and they seem to be very brazen, hiding behind anonymous accounts. So who is going to put a stop to that kind of abusive and exploitative behavior online? Could we hear now from the representative of Globe, Attorney Tubayan, on that first issue of holding ISPs liable?
Yes, Madam Chairman. Good morning. Good afternoon, I should say.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon as well to the members of the committee and to our fellow resource persons. I echo the statement of Attorney Eileen of PLTP regarding the role of ISPs or telecoms, and we provide the highway. Internet is rightly called the information highway, and that's what ISPs essentially do. But as to the content of that highway, all those who pass through that highway are various content providers, various platforms, various social media platforms. So there are various actors in this ecosystem of internet. So I agree that we need to parse through the law and come up with a better version of the law, hopefully by identifying the various actors and their responsibilities. And because, as pointed out by resource persons in the previous hearing, this is not just the role of the ISPs, nor of content providers, but the whole of society. The whole of society. It is a collaborative effort among all members of society, because all of us with a smartphone has a capability of uploading materials that are osaic or sesame. So we need to cut through the chase by identifying where these are produced in this country and the consumers of this sesame and osaic materials and cut the cord. So we fully support and we will the revisions proposed in the various bills, and we hope to continue our participation in the technical working group, Madam Chair. Madam Chair. So that will go, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you also, Attorney Tubayan, and also that offer that you mentioned at the end, which the committee will continue to rely on the participation of the telcos all the way up to the technical working group. You know, and speaking of highways, even on certain kinds of highways, there are certain kinds of vehicles that we don't allow. So an additional question for the telcos, both Globe and PLDT might want to return to it after I ask the smart resource person, what incentives could we give to get the private sector to be even more proactive? So could I ask now the resource person from SMART to speak?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Yes.
First,
Oh, yes. Mr. Ibay.
yes,
Please.
good afternoon. First of all, we thank you for inviting us to be part of this Senate hearing. So, in addition to what my colleagues in the industry, PLDT and Globe has already mentioned, yes, we actually support this ongoing amendment hearing, particularly because as the original law was enacted in 2009, a lot of events have already probably happened that makes it timely now for the law to be amended. In fact, 2 years after the anti-child porn law was enacted, in 2012, the Data Protection Act or the Data Privacy Law was also enacted. And so this also added to the problem of how ISPs will comply with the troublesome provision of Section 9 in that law, where it mentions that it should not construe that the ISPs could monitor any content being used by the users. At the same time, it provides a filter. So of late, the discussions now, at least in last week's TWG, is that there has been an introduction of, aside from the ISP, an internet intermediary or internet content host, which actually delineates already the fine line between what an internet service provider can do and what it cannot do. So, as stated by my colleagues, we only offer the pipes. We cannot see what content passes through our system. We only see data packets. And so, rightfully, these internet intermediaries or internet content hosts have platforms that actually host social media content, which makes them more probably rightful in terms of being able to monitor what content is being posted on their platform. So again, we support this hearing. We support the amendments, and maybe it would be high time really to now to go into the nitty gritty of being able to amend, rightfully, and to be able to make the internet a safer place for everybody, especially for our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much also, Mr. Ibay. Yes. Would any of our other private sector resource persons also like to make an input at this point? We also have with us today TikTok, Grab, and Angkas, among some others perhaps. And GCash, of course, and GCash. Would any of you colleagues like to address any of the issues that we've been discussing today? If not, or if, oh yes, sir. I see Mr. Rada from TikTok. Yes, please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Madam Chair. Thank you for inviting us to this hearing. And I think just to echo what has been shared by a lot of the industry partners, TikTok definitely takes online safety as a top priority for us. We are aware that there are a lot of perpetrators online, and as a platform, TikTok is proactively working. I think it was my friend Ariel from Globo mentioned that this is really a multi-sectoral problem, and we recognize this, and we're working with the private sector, with NGOs, and with the government to ensure that as a platform, we are ensuring mechanisms so that perpetrators will not be on the TikTok social media application. We are aware that a lot of Filipinos now are being drawn to the platform because of the fun and creative ways by which a lot of people can express themselves. But we are also aware that there is also a concomitant threat that it may also be used for nefarious purposes. So we are very actively working with the committee and the technical working group in both houses of Congress to ensure that the laws are properly attuned to the times, and we make sure that the internet is a safe place for all of our fellow Filipinos. Maraming salamat, Madam Chair.
Maraming salamat din po, Ginoong Rada. I also mentioned that GCash is with us today. I have a question here from one of our participants. If I may ask, related to Globe kasi GCash. GCash is being used for transactions for cyber sex and phishing and all other crimes. Is it possible to use this as an avenue, to use GCash as an avenue to identify perpetrators, since there is a verification process? Would you like to address that, Attorney Tubayan, before I go to Paymaya? Attorney, naka-mute kayo. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now, Madam Chair?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes, we have with us also the legal counsel of GCash, but yes, because of the KYC procedures for GCash, I think it is easy to trace the persons who transact outside materials through GCash. But as presented, I think at the last hearing, most of the transactions are through informal channels, I think, or the money remittance centers where there's less stringent verification, and only a small portion of transactions are done through Paymaya or GCash, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Tubayan. Nonetheless, it was brought up by one of our participants in the hearing, so it must account for some, if not major, significant or noticeable share. So the committee welcomes the openness, since you know your customer, since there is a verification process, that perhaps in the wisdom of the committee, with all these rich inputs from all of you resource persons, na posibleng maging paraan din ito to trace perpetrators. So thank you for at least that possibility. Could I call? Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, are you the one from Paymaya?
Yes, I am the one. This is Attorney Basil Visaya from Paymaya.
Attorney Visaya, and then I may call Ms. Sef. Yes, Mr. Visaya, please proceed.
Yes, Madam Chair. Paymaya Philippines fully supports the efforts of the government through legislation and law enforcement in helping prevent and prosecute cases of online sexual abuse and exploitation and human trafficking. Currently, we work closely with other financial services, institutions, and government regulators in responding to reports of online sexual abuse and exploitation and human trafficking. And part of our process, Madam Chair, is to temporarily suspend at the onset and investigate any account reported to us or found through our in-house monitoring systems, and investigate these accounts. And when we found out that these accounts are involved in trafficking, then we will immediately file a suspicious transaction report to our regulator, which is the BSP. And after that, we will block the account and terminate the account. So, Madam Chair, as a non-bank financial institution supervised by the BSP, we are fully committed to cooperate with the authorities in cases where criminal activities are involved, where our platforms and systems are being used for malicious purposes, including those of online sexual abuse and exploitation of children and women as well. As the internet and digital platforms evolve, Madam Chair, and access to the internet technologies become more widespread, we understand the need for a more proactive and expeditious response from all sectors of society, from the government to law enforcement agencies, including us, definitely, as part of the private sector, a crucial in preventing, detecting, and prosecuting perpetrators of mosaic and human trafficking. So a review, Madam Chair, of the bills presented show that the responsibility of electronic money issuers like us is threefold. One is to report suspicious transactions, which may be related to mosaic and human trafficking, and to block the account involved, and then to preserve the data. While we have already been doing these duties, Madam Chair, having a law that directs us to comply with these obligations, as well as specific rules and regulations that would guide us in determining OSAEC suspicious activities, would certainly help us in enhancing our capabilities towards protecting children from online predators. So just one last conclusion, Madam Chair, Paimaya expresses our full support and cooperation regarding measures currently pending in Congress to update pertinent laws on violence against women and children and trafficking in persons, so that they are updated with the latest models of committing such crimes to help prevent even more cases from happening in the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you to Attorney Visaya and to Paymaya. Just before I call on Ms. Seth for GCash, it's good to have you here also, ma'am, in addition to Globe. Gusto ko lang balikan sandali yung Red Room, because I do agree with Ms. Beth of DSWP that this is OSAIC material and deserves immediate takedown. And just to show the incongruity of standards, I'll flash you an account here, immediately suspended for making a joke about shrooms and posting a photo of mushrooms. So mas malala pala ito, with no minors involved. Our advocates therefore say that Facebook is the social media of choice because it is familiar to them. And I hope, as I've been hearing from Ms. Amber and your colleagues, I hope that I have FB's commitment to step up in this very troubling scene. So now, may I call Ms. Seth to speak for GCash.
Hi, good
Ms. Seth?
afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Madam Chair, this is Attorney Season from...
Attorney Season, yes, please.
Correct, from GCash. So, yes, also, just to support and only agree with what the other players are doing, like Paymaya and Globe, of course. We strongly abhor at GCash the use of our platform in this malicious and criminal transactions. And in fact, we proactively detect any activity that is related or analogous to prostitution or child pornography. And if we have established our own methods and ways of doing this internally, so that we will be able to do something about it even before any complaint comes our way. I think similar to what our colleague from Paymaya has mentioned, we have detection units for suspected transactions on pornography and prostitution. These are via customer service, where our customers would probably report or escalate such cases. We have also our anti-money laundering monitoring, where transactions which deviate from protocols or hits alert levels are reviewed and reported. And we have some tech tools also, where our partner vendor would crawl social media sites, internet, and even dark web whenever Gcash is mentioned. So with through these methods and ways, um, we do suspend the account right away, and then if we if we comply with the other requirements of law to file the necessary cases, we have established some relationship with NBI and PNP, so that this will facilitate and expedite the filing of the cases while all the evidence are preserved and existing. Yeah, so and we are actually uh, we want to dedicate some time and attention in whatever way we can to help come up with the right legislation on these criminal activities. That's all, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Attorney Seth. At this point, the chair would like to acknowledge Facebook for taking down the group that we showed earlier. So na-take down na, it's been taken down, pero sana all. Miss Amber, Miss Claire can tell you that's a Filipino expression that we wish all that should be taken down will be taken down by you and other platforms. So sana all. But good one for doing that. Dear colleagues, the chair would like to try to end by 1 p.m. So, as a possibly last question before a brief closing remark, I know that the children's rights advocates are pushing for a separate OSAIC bill. And based on these couple of hearings so far, it does appear that OSAIC should be treated as a distinct crime and not be lumped together with another a bill treating of another distinct crime, the Anti-Trafficking in Persons bill. May I hear the thoughts of the Child Rights Network on this, please? Ms. Nanita, would you like to speak to this question? Two separate measures, or do we need to combine? Because the mind of the chair is leaning towards two separate measures still. Ms. Nanita, are you here? I don't see Ms. Nanita. Or anyone from the CRN, please? I see Tony Flores or any child rights advocate who's still with us. Would you like to speak to that point, please? Sir Ace, would you like to take this up again? Mr. Diloy.
Thank you, Senator Risa. Although,
yes, please.
We're not members of CRM, but we're close partners.
You are a child rights advocate.
Yes, definitely. We also support the notion that there should be a separate OSAIC bill, because as what we've discovered, and you might have noted in the previous hearings also, that OSAIC in itself has several nuances. And my fear, or fear also as child rights advocates, is that if we lump this together with the anti-trafficking in persons bill, we might muddle the provisions. So having two separate bills would make it more hyper-focused, and this would also allow us to give justice to those voices that we've heard today.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Diloy. So, just one more thing before we close, unless my colleagues have any last questions. And for especially for USEC-M, I hope that the DOJ can continue to support this. The direction that the committee seems to be taking towards two separate and not one combined measure. Of course, giving due consideration, weighty consideration to the proposed amendments coming from the Justice Department. So, Sen Aimee, do you have any other point that you would like to raise in our hearing?
No, I think we have a lot of work to do. So we need to push a little bit harder so that we can finish this, if not within the month of Women's Month, at least through this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sen Aimee, one of our authors of the bills that we've considered these past couple of hearings. But yes, let's see if we can push this at least one step further before we adjourn this Women's Month. So, dear friends and colleagues, we've exposed very revealing things today. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat, sa bawat isa sa inyo, especially Ria, Ana, and Kev for sharing your stories. Thank you so much. Unspeakable crimes have been happening right under our noses. Unspeakable crimes that should finally be put to a stop. Now, to be honest, I don't really feel the urgency yet of all our private companies, not yet all the social networks that we invited today. Mga bata at totoong mga tao ang naapektuhan ng teknolohiya ninyo. Pinakita natin na may over 7,000 members ang isang Facebook group kung saan maraming mga kabataan ang na-exploit at naaabuso. Mga batang nagbebenta ng sexual videos in exchange for money para sa modules nila for online learning. Pero ang isang sagot kanina ay iimbestigahan namin. Pero yung mushrooms, suspended agad. Yung mga bata baka kung hindi pa nag-hearing, hindi ma-actionan. Buti na lang may isang bata na nagsumbong sa ating lahat. Ilan pa ang mga groups, mga messaging apps, Google Drives na di natin alam na naaabuso na pala ng ating kabataan. How can you ensure that you put the interests of our people, our young people, our children over your products? We all need to see that consistently. So please review your policies, review your community standards. In that way, let us not downplay the seriousness of the situation. I expect all of you, dear colleagues, all of us, to be more proactive in this fight. Let's end online sexual abuse and exploitation of children now. I call on all resource persons to please participate in the second and last TWG next week, Monday. Again, with thanks to all of you, this hearing is adjourned. Salamat po. Ingat everyone, stay healthy.
Salamat po.
Salamat.